on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
Turkeys, they never leave my mind.
We are getting close to turkey season here. After a long winter, it's just one of the most exciting.
The nice thing about turkey hunting, there's so many different styles.
The diversity of tactics, it's a chess game.
Turkeys are doing trigonometry all the time. They can triangulate a sound to within 3 or 4 feet.
One of the biggest mistakes people make is they move before the bird gets there. Don't worry, the bird knows exactly where you are.
The way turkey seasons are set is so that about 55 to 60% of the breeding has occurred before we start the season.
I don't have all the skill of all those different calls and the advantages of them, but I've done pretty well with the mouth call.
It's like going to a foreign country. You don't have to know every word, but if you know enough to just ask where the bathroom is and know where to get food, then you're pretty good.
Episode 125 of the WildFed podcast, So You Want a Turkey Hunt with Carter Heath, is brought to you by Surthrival. I've been using colostrum daily and promoting it as a powerful nutritional supplement for over 15 years. In fact, I just had a quarter cup in my blended drink this morning. With its ability to fortify your immune system, nourish and rebuild your gut lining, repair injuries, aid in muscle growth and recovery, and so much more, I think it's one of the most sophisticated supplements we can work into our diets. Surthrival is already known as the #1 source for premium colostrum, and now Surthrival's just released 3 new formulas: naturally flavored colostrum in chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. They're lightly sweetened with monk fruit and combined with MCT oils to make them more soluble in water and blended drinks, all while having the same potency of Surthrival's original formula. These flavored colostrum powders are so good, I keep eating them by the spoonful right out of the tub. In fact, the amount I ate the day they first arrived was probably a little over the top, but I had to test them rigorously. I'm guessing I ate 5 cups or more. Eaten like that, they're like a powdered ice cream, but of course, they make great blended drinks too. By the way, these aren't those fake flavors you taste in so many supplement powders. These are flavored with real cacao, vanilla, and strawberry, so they taste great and really clean too. Right now, they and all the colostrum products at surthrival.com are 20% off with the coupon code RESTORE. This is Surthrival's biggest colostrum sale of the year, so don't miss out. Head over to surthrival.com to get yours today. This episode's also brought to you by Wild Food Warehouse. Wild Food Warehouse is your preferred source for hand-foraged wild rice. They also carry a beautiful line of hand-harvested berry and plant powders from the northern latitudes of Finland. Their blueberry, lingonberry, and spruce tip powders are all sourced from pristine lands north of the Arctic Circle and packed in light-resistant, nutrient-protecting violet-colored Miron glass. And they've just added a new 150-gram size that's 3 times more product at a significant savings. I love mixing a tablespoon of these powders into a liter of water, squeezing in some lemon, and adding a little stevia to sweeten it. It makes a super refreshing and hydrating drink, and the rich color and flavor of these powders lets you know you're getting mega-dosed with antioxidants and key nutrients like vitamin C. Head over to wildfoodwarehouse.com to check out their selection of Arctic-sourced fruit and superfood powders, and of course for hand-harvested wild rice too. The coupon code WildFed gets you 10% off your order. Again, it's Wild Food Warehouse, and the coupon code is WildFed. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. My guest today is Carter Heath, Regional Director for the New England and New York chapters of the National Wild Turkey Federation and longtime guest and friend of the show. He's also bilingual, speaking both English as well as wild turkey, in which he's quite fluent. Not just at cutting and gobbling, but even at Jake calls and gentle hen purrs too. The man simply exudes wild turkey vibes as if he were wrapped in a turkey atmosphere. And he gets to share his passion as a profession, which is just a beautiful thing to witness in a person. Today, I thought it'd be fun to talk about getting started turkey hunting start to finish. So this interview focuses on everything you need to know to get going, from getting your hunting license to selecting a weapon and strategy to turning your bird, or hopefully birds, into delicious meals. The season's just around the corner, and though there's still some snow on the ground here where I live, just yesterday my wife heard a gobble from outside our front door. The turkey rut is just about to kick off, and I couldn't be more excited for a little spring thunder. But for now, enjoy the gobbling, cutting, and gentle purrs of Carter Heath. He's been a significant part of the incredible interest we've been experiencing around the spring turkey hunt in recent years, with its rapidly expanding hunter participation and especially the growing interest we've seen from new hunters. I hope he inspires you to get involved if you aren't already and to join the National Wild Turkey Federation this year. It's just $35 a year, comes with a great magazine subscription, and your money goes to support very real and tangible habitat restoration projects and wild turkey conservation efforts. In fact, I just renewed my membership this morning, so join me in that whether you hunt or not, because we need all hands on deck to preserve our hunting heritage and to conserve the wild turkey.
Carter Heath, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much, Daniel. I'm pretty excited to be here.
I'm glad to see you again, man. It's been a while.
It's been a while since I've been here in the studio, so it's great to catch up.
Yeah, man, and we are getting close to turkey season here.
Are we? I hadn't even noticed. Really? No, it's pretty much an ever driving force in my brain. So yeah.
And in your work though too, right? So
absolutely.
Maybe tell everybody, for folks who aren't familiar with you, tell us about what your work is and who you work with.
Absolutely. My name is Carter Heath, and I am very blessed to be able to make my living as the regional director for New England and Eastern New York now for the National Wild Turkey Federation.
Ooh, growing.
So yeah, so it just means that I get to have experiences with even more cool people.
Yeah.
You know, fellow turkey nerds like myself.
Yeah, they're an addictive species, man. Once you get around them,
it really is. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's that adrenaline from hearing the gobble and. But my job is basically, as a regional director, is fundraising and volunteer empowerment and recruitment. Okay. So we are an organization, we're a conservation organization that's driven by hunting. So our mission is that we're dedicated to the conservation of the wild turkey and the preservation of our hunting heritage. And that's two things that are really important to me personally. I had been a volunteer for the Turkey Federation for many years prior to becoming an employee. So that has always been something that's been near and dear to my heart, wanting to ensure that hunting is something that can survive.
Yeah, I'm always baffled that we have this conversation at all because of how ancient hunting is and how fundamental it is to being human.
Yep.
And I end up spending a lot of time thinking about, and I guess I have a lot of time with like imaginary debates and dialectics in my mind about it, because the idea of us giving up hunting, it's like fundamental food strategy, acquisition strategy for humans. It's like what we do to get food.
Right.
And I just don't believe that we can experience being fully human. Not that every individual needs to do it, but as a species, I feel like we need to conserve that or preserve that.
Preserve that hunting heritage.
Let's get into that in a second too. But we need to preserve that. And even if, because today we're hardly on the, this is hardly Beringia circa 14,000 years ago, right?
Right.
This is a very managed thing. But even if it's in a museum sense, it needs to exist because we need to maintain that connection to it, right?
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, is a very conservative viewpoint from the perspective of what it means to like, I have a friend, we talk about this sometimes. We use today the terms liberal and conservative to mean something different than what they maybe fully mean.
Correct.
But like the idea of trying to keep something alive from 300,000 years ago is the essence of being conservative, right?
Right, yes.
But when this thing comes up about what's conservation, what's preservation, people get confused about these. Can you kind of break that down a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Conservation essentially just means that we're using our resources wisely. And now whether those resources are timber products, whether that's turkeys, bear, deer, moose, or even, non-game resources, pollinators and songbirds, conservation of that basically means that we want to utilize those wisely and not be frivolous or foolish with that. So conservation is really an important component for us. And I've had some folks get a little in my face about it. I've seen some people before who don't quite understand that concept of what conservation is. I've had people tell me that it's a made-up word. I've had folks put a finger, thump me on the chest and say, you know, what are you even doing here? And they don't see how conservation and hunting are so closely meshed.
Now, this is interesting to me, given my background. So when you say that, I have the impression you're saying you've encountered folks who think that conservation is going to infringe on their hunting rights.
Correct.
Because I could see this happening on either side, where somebody on the other side feels like you call it conservation to pretty up what you're doing, which is destroying the earth, essentially, through your hunting, right? So, but this you're talking about on the hunting side, people who feel threatened by conservation.
Correct.
Probably folks who've watched laws be enacted over the course of their hunting careers, and they're worried that hunting is being squeezed out by environmentalism.
Right. And I have taken those opportunities to become teachable moments and to explain, I love deer and turkeys and animals. I'm an animal lover. And sometimes that's hard for people that don't get it to wrap their head around, well, then why do you kill them? Well, that's part of my whole natural cycle. I love to eat wild game. I mean, that's my favorite kind of protein to source. So, my wife and I eat venison and turkey meat as much as we possibly can throughout the whole year. It's, we're and like that, I conserve what I have in the freezer. I'm not frivolous with it, but preservation, on the other hand, so again, going back to our mission, conservation of the wild turkey means we want to be smart with the wild turkey. We want to be
while using it. Right.
And we're also dedicated to the preservation of our hunting heritage, which is something that's super important to me on a personal level, because hunting, I started hunting when I was about 9 years old, so I'm coming into my 41st year of hunting. Yeah. So it's something that is very important to me, but so by preserving it, we're looking to protect it.
Right. In other words, to not use any of it, not give any of it up. To not
give it up. Right. Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. So with the idea with conservation is like, we're going to spend off this like a bank account, and we're going to replenish it. The goal being that we at least keep what we have or grow the account. Whereas with something that we want to preserve, like for me, I think a lot about like with Second Amendment rights. It's like, I don't like to spend anything out of that. I want to keep that fully intact, even when sometimes it seems obnoxious, because there's certain things where I'll be like, I could see giving that up, but I don't want to, because I don't want to give anything up, because as soon as I do,
then
it gets
that
really
opens
slippery.
The door. It's a slippery slope.
And I feel like that with hunting. You see it happen in some states now where bit by bit, because there's things on the fringe of hunting that I don't really have a dog in the fight. And in some cases, that's literally the issue. But it's like, I don't have skin in that game, except that I care about the hunting I do, and I'm worried that it starts with this thing on the fringe with a small community. So preserving that, in other words, not giving anything up, but then the conservation piece is this idea that we are going to utilize the resource. And it's interesting on that other side, because you talked about folks on one extreme being kind of afraid of that. And then folks on the other side, the other extreme, where they'll say they don't want you to use any of those, what we're calling resources. But it's strange, because those folks do believe in the use of resources. It's just cherry picking what resources they want to use, right? Because those folks often want like certain types of green technologies, which are really resource heavy. And it's like, well, then why can you use these resources but not these resources? Or why can we plow up an entire field to grow soy, but we can't take some turkeys off of that field when they're coming in there eating the soy? It makes no sense, right? So that's interesting. Well, we are getting pretty close to the turkey season, as we were saying. What kind of things are ramping up in your world? Because, I mean, my goodness, you guys must just be getting so busy.
Oh, I'm as a fundraiser for the National Wild Turkey Federation, my banquets season, which banquets are one of our primary, one of the many tools in our toolbox for raising funds. And those funds, we use those to affect positive impact on the landscape. actually have a really wonderful NWTF district biologist here in New England with me, Matt DeBona, and he's my guy for all things project wise, and so we have some really cool things that we've been able to do based on monies that have been raised throughout the region. We actually just finished up nearly 50 acres of forest opening on actually the White Mountain National Forest, the U.S. Forest Service.
Oh, yeah?
Between New Hampshire and Maine.
Oh, what area?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the
kind of those are my stomping grounds over there,
right? And so that just goes into some of that whole thing where having forest diversity equals forest health.
Yeah.
And so
a lot of times with the national forest, you see it just gets so grown up, and there's so little access left, and there's so little habitat.
Yep.
It's just overgrown. There's that tendency for the idea of let's just leave it alone a lot of times.
Glass bubble.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Right.
And then it becomes uninhabitable to a lot of creatures, not just people. So, wow.
But so with turkeys, though, they never leave my mind. I've been seeing some winter flocks that have been showing what I'm hoping to see this spring. I think the spring of 22 has potential to be a good gobbling year.
Yeah.
Because the spring of 20, at least up here in New England, had been a really good clutch spring. So now those jakes that would have been born in 20, they're going to be screaming 2-year-olds this spring. So my hope is that we'll have a lot of good gobbling birds.
Yeah.
So
you're hearing a lot of guys saying now, hey, I'm not hearing as many gobbles as I used to. And some folks are worrying maybe birds that have a tendency to gobble get shot out faster, and that might be slowly sort of changing the arc of how they communicate, or they're getting hip to hunting, or there's so many more guys in the woods, so many more people in the woods calling. Is it that? Is it, I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of that, or you think.
I mean, a lot of that I've seen. I mean, I've read a lot of.
You've heard it all.
I've seen a lot. I've read a lot. I'm just a sponge for all of that.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, what I've seen was particularly where I'm from New Hampshire, so I do a lot of hunting in that state, and what I saw particularly in 20, when we were first kind of coming into the pandemic, and a lot of people had their day jobs weren't letting them go to work, so there was a lot more people out on the landscape hunting.
That season was crazy.
It was crazy. And what I saw was, as the season went on, particularly where I am, instead of being a Saturday, Sunday, higher pressure, hunting pressure, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, chilling out by Thursday, typically, birds are gobbling and not really, haven't had that direct impact. What I saw both in 20 and 21 was there's a tendency in some of the easier to get to spots that it was more weekend type pressure throughout the whole week.
Yeah.
And I saw in some cases birds that really by the middle to the last week of the season were not as excited to gobble. Not as, they'd come in, but they were coming in a little quieter.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that changing up the calling attitude helped out a lot.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that you can't forever get away with the same our tactics will need to evolve all the time. I guess it's in a sense like that classic arms race idea.
Right.
What I really want to talk with you about today is I want to kind of go through what it might look like for somebody to get involved this year, and I want to try to cut their learning curve as much as we can, especially assuming that somebody, I think it's easy to say find a mentor, and some people are going to do that, or get connected with an organization that's kind of educating. But not everyone's going to get to do that, or some folks aren't the type. And so I want to shorten their learning curve too by talking about everything from the ecology, where do you go, to equipment and calls and ammunition, all those kind of things, right up through. Maybe we can go right up through till you get your bird tagged and you get it home.
Absolutely.
What do you do with it? Because I would be curious at the National Wild Turkey Federation, you guys have your finger on the pulse of the growth of this sector of the hunting world. And I also would suspect that it's one of the faster growing segments in the hunting world, right?
It is, yeah.
It's just one of the most exciting. It's after a long winter, so I think, if turkey hunting just happened in the fall, maybe less people would be as inclined, but you kind of got that cabin fever.
Exactly.
So we're rolling into that. I think that the diversity of tactics and strategies make it's a chess game.
Oh, totally.
Which is really fun.
It
love
really
that part
is.
Of it.
It's very, as I've said before, turkeys have a fairly small brain, but they tend to use quite a bit of it. they use a large percentage of that little peanut in their noggin.
And like you said, I mean, if you try to tell somebody who wasn't familiar with it, the adrenaline rush that a bird call can give you. But I mean, when a big tom comes in drumming, it sends your heart. I think I'm going to wear I've been training a lot this year with a heart rate monitor. I think I'm going to wear it out there. I want to see what happens when I start to get callbacks or when I hear some drumming. But all right, how is that is growing fast and what are the numbers like right now? Do you know?
Boy, as far as say membership for the National Wild Turkey Federation, pre-COVID, we had been up above 200,000, solid members. We took a bit of a hit because a lot of that comes through our event system, and now we're gaining rapidly. We're kind of coming back into it. As far as hunting numbers go, I know for New Hampshire, for example, we're usually between 19,000 to 21,000 turkey tags sold in there. And to give some context to that, we're at about 1,400 members in New Hampshire. So it's a fairly small percentage. And, that's one thing that'll be my plea through all of this is, if you're able to spare a little bit of time to get involved with a conservation organization. For me, it's turkeys, and if you wanted to get involved in the Turkey Federation, that'd be great. But like you said, Daniel, have some skin in the game, and have some say in the direction that we're going in as hunters. It's so important. But I digress a little bit. You can see the passion runs pretty full. It's definitely a growth sector. And what we're seeing is that there's a lot of families, like moms and dads taking their kids out, which having that structure, for a long time, the theory of getting kids to learn to hunt is amazing. It's terrific. But if you help give them the skills, but they don't have any support to get them out there, that's something that may get lost. So we are doing a lot of mentor programs, family events. So that's something that has been a growth sector, definitely.
I want to ask you about the mentoring component there you just mentioned, because as far as people getting involved this year for the first time who've never turkey hunted, that, before kind of figuring out what do you need for this, what do you need for that, it's like if there's a program somebody can get involved in, that shortcuts everything. It's like, well, just start there, that's going to do a lot more than a podcast can do for somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
So what kind of programs have you been seeing, and how do people kind of find those?
First of all, the NWTF website is a great, nwtf.org, check that out. But also, we have Vermont, New Hampshire, Mass, and Connecticut. We've got different programs going for mentor, and some of them are virtual, so that it's just, tune in and watch. Others are in person. So in New Hampshire, NWTF, the state chapter of New Hampshire, works with New Hampshire Fish and Game to produce a couple of in-person mentor programs. So it's soup to nuts. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's biology, history, the science of it all, the calling, tactics, and then basically like you had indicated, what to do with the bird afterwards.
Yeah, right.
And that is usually people's favorite parts, because there is some intimidation about, okay, once I get this, if I'm so blessed to be able to shoot a bird, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And that's absolutely something that we can cover. But Massachusetts State Board works really closely with Mass Fish and Wildlife to do a very similar program. Vermont has Nicole Meyer up in Vermont at their Fish and Wildlife. Amazing as far as R3 efforts and working on these kind of learn to turkey hunt type programs. Yeah. So they're out there. If you're listening to this, I would suggest at this point, by the time this airs, a lot of that will have already taken place. But please check NWTF state pages on, say, Facebook and stuff. Yeah. Check the NWTF website and check your state Fish and Wildlife. Yeah, exactly. Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife.
Okay, so that's kind of a starting point.
Yeah.
You're looking there. And I think the obvious one, and we don't need to spend too much time on this, but the obvious one is if you know somebody and you can talk to them. Do you have any thoughts on that? As I imagine you guys are promoting that pretty heavily too.
Yep. Make friends with the postman. Make friends with, if you have a rural route carrier, if you're near that kind of area.
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that for scouting.
A police officer, an oil truck delivery driver,
folks
guys that are on the road. And if you can talk to them and they're willing to give you some information. Yeah. And one thing I will kind of caveat that, there's always kind of what do you prefer, woods birds, and I'm doing the air finger quotes, or field birds?
Oh, the mountain birds.
The mountain birds, chummy. That's right. The thing about field birds is if the gas truck delivery driver, the rural route carrier, and the police officer are all seeing those birds and they tell you about them, you can be pretty well willing to bet that 40,000 other folks have seen them.
Yeah, yep.
What that does is it gives you kind of a jumping off point. It gives you a place to look at. And in today's day and age, you can use your phone to find out a lot of information as far as what properties you can hunt, what properties have habitat that looks like it would be good for turkeys. I'm partial to edge cover. Yeah. I like cutoffs. Oak ridges
as they oaks and there's some open space.
Yep. I really like all of those. Yeah. If you really wanted to get down to the basics of turkeys, the things you need to remember: turkeys fly up into trees every night. It's called roosting. They don't always stay in the same limb that they flew up on. Most of the time, the best time to gather intel on turkeys is with your ears, and it's going to be after they've flown up or just before they're ready to fly down in the morning. I do a lot of my scouting with my ears because that's when they're most vocal, and that's when they'll give up the most information to you. Pre-season, I do my absolute best not to disturb natural turkey behavior.
In other words, no calls.
I don't call unless you do like a locator, what's called a locator call.
Shock gobble.
Yeah, and so an owl hoot, a crow call, something that's kind of not going to directly impact their behavior, but because it seems to fall, I've seen some studies that those sounds seem to fall in a decibel range that's similar. It's what they respond to. That will sometimes get a bird to gobble.
Okay, so what I'm hearing out of this, let's back up a little bit. So, gathering intel about where birds are. About 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the season starts for me, I start driving.
Yep.
I get up about right around dawn. Get in the car. I really enjoy that time too.
Oh, yeah.
Start driving around all the places that I have seen birds before. What are the flocks like? Where am I seeing them? Where are they coming from? I like to drive around evenings as we get a little further into that time, as we get closer, especially the week before. Where are they going at night?
Right.
And if I drive enough, it's not like magic. Eventually I'm going to see some
Right.
walking through a field, heading to usually some big old pines somewhere
where
with
they
a good
roost.
vantage
Yep.
point.
Yep.
And if I'm lucky, I'll see them actually fly right up in there, which is the best thing.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. And then I would say the day or two before I hunt, or sometimes during the hunting season, if I don't have a hunting spot for the morning, I'll start going around to the areas where I think they might be roosting, and I'll bring my owl call, and I'll do a barred owl call.
Yep.
And I'm looking to try to figure out what tree I'm getting calls back from.
Exactly.
And then I plan a strategy for the morning to be there when they get up.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's spot on. And that, like, turkey hunting 101 right there. Now, that being said, again, I'm a morning guy. I love being up in the early morning. You can, in Maine, you can hunt all day. In New Hampshire, it's until noon. A lot of states are till noon or 1 around the country.
This is this like a sportsmanship thing, or is there any practical logistics for this?
The standard idea of stopping hunting at noon is that as we get further into the season, hens will be going to lay on a nest, and the fewer people in the afternoon that are kind of tromping around in the woods, the less chance for nest disruption.
Okay, all right, so that's an ecological reason.
Right.
I've probably only killed a couple of birds afternoon myself anyway, but sometimes you catch them going to the roost, and so I do like being in Maine where you
right.
But that makes sense to me. I'd never really thought about that. Yeah. But okay, so you were saying though,
I love the early mornings, but my most effective time for actually killing birds is 9:30, 10 o'clock.
You're hearing a lot more people saying now, like, hey, why get up at 4 a.m.? You don't really need to. And so I'm seeing a bit of a shift in people's, even like some folks I know who've been 4 a.m. hunters their whole hunting career are starting to say that to me. Yeah.
So I will do that. I mean, oftentimes when I'm planning a strategy, it's not based around shooting a bird right off of the roost once their feet hit, terra firma. I like having, I enjoy the hunt so much.
Yeah.
I like being out there early so that I can take stock, take note. Okay, there's a gobble off to my northwest. There's a gobble to the south. There's a gobble over here. Oh, yeah. Okay, so then I have a game plan for how I want to handle that. And, scouting, knowing the terrain, knowing obstacles. Conventional wisdom says that calling a turkey over a stone wall, and we have plenty of stone walls. I've done it. I've seen it happen. But barbed wire, brooks rivers.
Like one, you'll see them fly right over a river, but then you try to call them over, and they're like, no, you come. I mean,
and that's something we should touch on so that people understand. Tom turkey is biologically, genetically wired to stand and have a hen come to him for breeding. And once she's ready, she will lay down and he will copulate, and then he moves on. And so what we as hunters are trying to do is go against his genetic coding and have him come to us.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, Season 2 of our TV show WildFed is now on the air. That's right, 10 new episodes are airing on Outdoor Channel Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern and again at 10:30 p.m. Our 5th episode just aired, featuring a trip to the Florida Everglades with Mike Kimmel, the Python Cowboy, to take on the Burmese python invasion and to test out whether eating python can be part of the solution to the ecological catastrophe they've caused there. We'll also be foraging for saw palmetto hearts, an incredible palm heart delicacy that reminds me of bamboo shoots. Next Monday, we're in the Gulf of Maine offshore fishing for a giant Atlantic bluefin tuna. We're also gathering seawater to make our own sea salt and then putting together an incredible sushi dinner for an intimate group of friends. Hey, if you don't have cable, you can watch the show live as it airs on friendlytv.com. That's spelled friendly without vowels, FRNDLY TV.com. You can get a free trial subscription there if you want to watch this Monday's episode. That's how I'll be watching it. And after that, it's just $6.99 a month. Here at WildFed, we're so proud to have our 2nd season on the air, and we really hope you'll support us by tuning in either on Outdoor Channel or friendlytv.com. Now, back to the show.
That's where it gets to be a lot of those the chess moves, the mind games, knowing what the playing field looks like, and
because to ask him to come in is one thing. To ask him to go through that amount of effort, you start to bump into those biological walls where he's like, this isn't even what I do.
Right.
Like, I'm not crossing that river or that brook or that wall. Like,
yep. So,
especially if he's encountered, I mean, the number of birds who probably get shot at and get away.
Oh yeah.
Maybe even have a pellet or two in them, but survive it, or just see the woods come alive as a ghillie suit and realize like they got had. That's got to happen, and it's got to be like operant conditioning where you get that negative feedback, and you're like, I'm not going to these calls anymore.
There's a lot of conditioning. They're a survival based brain. Yeah. Their little nugget of brain mass is instinctually driven. Yeah. And so it's kind of like if you put your hand on a hot stove, you're not going to do that again.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So, if this bird is getting called to by this guy and the hunt gets busted, he shoots, misses, whatever, but then the same guy goes back and tries to do the same thing with the same calling sequence, same everything, there's a pretty good chance, and nothing is forever in nature. We all know that, but
they're short-lived birds.
Right. That they may not be inclined to repeat that. That's not saying it won't happen, but that's one reason I like to mix up my calling. Yeah. I like to have an understanding of what I'm saying, and that's something to a new turkey hunter. Turkeys make, I think it's 28 different vocalizations. You don't need to know them all. You don't need to be a Grand National.
You don't even need to be that good.
You don't need to be that good. But what you do need to have is a basic understanding of what you're trying to do. Yeah. And if you can, it's like going to a foreign country. You don't have to know every word, but if you know enough to just ask where the bathroom is and know where to get food, then you're pretty good. So,
and there's certain things you like don't want to say.
Right.
Well, let's get to calls in a bit. I want to back up a little bit. Yep. So you were talking about knowing the terrain and also where you can hunt. Do you use Onyx?
I do. I use both Onyx and Hunt Stand.
Okay. So I don't use Hunt Stand, so I can't speak to it. But I've been using Onyx for a while, and it's obviously these are amazing tools.
They are really good.
Yep. Yeah. So knowing where you can hunt, and also, if maybe you can hunt this one field, but the next field's posted, or you can't go there, it's good to kind of know, all right, I got to make sure this bird doesn't head this direction. Right. That's my wall, my limit, whatever it is.
Right. Absolutely.
So knowing where you can hunt, and then also for scouting, I mean, having some kind of GPS where you can, and map software where you can kind of start to document where you see scat, where you see birds, where you see tracks, where you see feathers, where you see other hunters. All those kind of things can be really useful as you create your sort of picture of your season, right?
Very, very helpful with that. And another thing that's nice about it is in a lot of those apps, you have the opportunity to see who owns what property. Yeah. And, in the Northeast, northern New England particularly, we have kind of the colonial land sharing, whereas if it's not posted, you can technically enjoy it, hunting, fishing. I always encourage folks to, have a good relationship with your landowner. And that's one way to find out who owns what land. Yeah. In this day of GIS tax maps, pretty much almost every town, you can go on your phone and figure out who owns what piece of property and knock on doors. And that's the thing, is don't be afraid to knock on doors. I know it's, for some folks, it's not a natural.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
Yeah. But, the worst thing that'll happen is, they may say, nope, somebody else already hunts here, or no, we don't allow hunting. Yep. Which you just respect it and move on. And, but.
So figuring out where you're going to hunt, obviously that's a big part of it. Figuring out where birds are, that's a big part of it. Where do you kind of want to go from there as to like next step?
Well, do you want to cover a little bit of equipment?
Yeah, I do. Let's obviously just real quickly, hunting licenses are pretty straightforward on this. It's not like migratory birds where you got to get a hunting license, plus you got to get a federal stamp. this is either going to come with your big game hunting license, or you're going to add it on.
Correct. Yeah.
When you get it. So
make sure when you're buying your license. I know here in Maine, you have the option of either using your small game license or your big game license, and then you get your turkey permit on top of that. New Hampshire, I believe you have to have your large game license, and then you can piggyback on that with your turkey. But just make sure, before you go out,
make sure you got it.
Make sure you have your...
I'm such a believer in like the Maine Super PAC. It's like I have everything, all the endorsements, don't need to think about it. It encourages me to do more to get my value out of it. If I don't, I know I'm contributing back into the fund. That feels good. And it's just nice that if any opportunity comes up, I can just go do it without having to really think much about it. So what I'm talking about is a lot of states offer a package deal. Like I think I pay $201.
Oh,
and I think that's such a great deal.
That's such a good deal.
Because I routinely have to get out-of-state hunting licenses to do the TV show, and often pay that much just to go for a weekend somewhere. So yeah, $200. It's a great deal, and then I know I'm covered, and I get my 2 birds in the spring. I get my 5 birds in the fall. So that's how I like to do it. But all right, so you get your hunting license.
Yep. Knowing your hunting regulations.
Yeah.
And equipment can kind of tie in there a little bit. Like in New Hampshire, you can't use electronic means to call birds, which could be as simple, and I hate to say this, but if you have like a Yelp ringtone and your phone rings and you've got a bird in proximity, and it could just be a bad look. Yeah. So I always try to encourage people, know what your laws are. Know your shot size limits. Know your and that kind of dives in a little bit more with knowing your equipment, which we can touch on. In a little bit,
I would like to, because that's important. So read and reread and reread again, and double check each year, because things change. Like we just had some changes here in Maine with what size shotgun we can use and such. So these things shift and change, and it is a rapidly changing landscape, because I see, because it's growing, and because hunting strategies are changing, which means laws are having to shift. So we'll get to it, but I know Maine's recently allowed the 410 shotgun because there's a new trend in turkey hunting, and they're accounting for these changes. So, so good stuff to keep track of. Also, real quick on safety, because two things I want to say about it. This is a season that we hunt without orange.
Correct.
These birds have excellent color vision.
Yep.
And as evidenced by the incredible iridescence of their feathers and whatnot, and their brightly colored heads. So obviously they're using color information in a way that, like, let's say deer aren't.
Correct.
So we can't be doing the orange thing. And there is, I want to get to talking about, there's sort of a hunting style that is extremely effective and that I like to employ, but has some safety issues with it. And that's essentially... Really, it's anytime you stalk a bird, right? So I'd like to get into that safety bit too, and then let's do equipment.
Sure. First thing, like you alluded to, the colors red, white, and blue. I don't include them anywhere on my person that's visible. Just because a male turkey's head is
red, white,
very
blue.
Patriotic. Red, white, and blue,
I don't know
baby.
if it's a joke. It had to have been done on purpose. Did you see the Meat Eater episode where Steve Ranella and Brian Callen, they're comedians, and they go hunting with Steve Ranella, and Brian Callen's wearing a American flag bandana around his neck, and and they never say if it's a joke or not, but Steve's telling him, like, no, of all the things, like, that's the one thing you can't wear.
Yeah. So pay attention to that, and to that point, making sure that your face and hands are covered, just from a bright and shiny standpoint. But also from as far as like hearing birds, interacting with turkeys. One thing that I will share if I'm doing a seminar or whatnot is at least keep it in your mind that if you're getting a bird to respond, like a hen yelping back at you or whatever, always use the filter in your mind that could be another hunter.
Yeah.
It very well may not
be. And more a gobble could be too.
But a gobble could be, right, because some people will use a gobble tube as a means of inciting violence with another turkey.
9 out of 10 times I'm hunting with actively with the gobble.
It's a very effective way to get a bird to break, and I can kind of touch on that a little bit. But that being said, along with the stalking of the birds that you're talking about, they both have great deal of effectiveness, but they also come with some pretty solid safety risks that you just need to be really mindful of.
Mainly because you could be shot.
You could be shot, right?
I think I think that some folks, particularly, like I got kind of raised around guns a little later in life, and by then, because I have friends, like I'm sure you do too, who it's like, oh, I used to bring my shotgun to school and put it in my locker.
Right.
It was a different world around firearms in the past.
Life has changed. Right.
I kind of got into firearms after all that changed, and so the idea of shooting into something I can't see is just, I can't conceive of it.
Right.
There are folks that do that, and I think when people have shot instead of a rifle round,
single projectile, right?
There's a higher tendency to feel like, well, this isn't going more than 35, 40, 50 yards, and it's scatter, and it's not got that deep penetration of a bullet, so I'll shoot into that bush where I saw a rustle and heard a call. Right. Because that does happen every year, right? Like I imagine that people occasionally are taking...
And adrenaline can be a funny thing, but that's why...
And confirmation bias.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the rules of hunter education, the biggie, know your target and what's beyond it. I always raised my son to, you don't squeeze the trigger until you are 100% sure that the shot you're going to take is safe. Yeah. And, the metrics of that, I would much rather go home with the tag still in my pocket and having had a good experience than taking or causing injury to a fellow hunter.
Can you imagine?
So it's and I'm not trying to stand on any moral high ground or anything, but it's something that you can't preach enough. Yeah. As you being safe out there, be a good representative of hunting.
And right down to two other safety things I want to say is careful with what you're doing with those decoys. I've done some things that looking back on, I'm like, that's dumb. Like picking my decoy up while I'm hiding behind a wall and lifting it up slowly over there because I see some birds over there. It's like, somebody could shoot at that. And also, once harvesting a bird and carrying it out, it's another time to be considerate that somebody could see that, a flash of that bird moving through the woods, and it's on your shoulders, and you're in full ghillie suit.
Full camo.
Yeah, so those are just kind of things that we need to think about first and foremost.
Right, and some of that can tie into the gear conversation as well, like with a good turkey vest, which you don't need, but there is a handy pocket, big back pocket in the back that can take an entire turkey and keep it obscured on the walk out.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk. So safety being those kind of basic things, and obviously the one other thing I think we should bring up is we can get into tactics after, but the reap hunting behind the fan. Essentially, you're now typically we're impersonating that we're a hen, and we're trying to attract that tom in. But sometimes people are pretending to be a tom or a jake, and in trying to instigate a fight with a tom. And that technique being a tom, now you are impersonating the thing other people
are trying to hunt.
Yeah, and some people are a little maybe quick to the trigger because they're so geared up on it. So it's just, we know, like if I'm going to be carrying a turkey fan and crawling around on my belly pretending I'm a tom with a gobble call, I need to be thinking about...
Be very, very mindful of that, because there are... there are safety issues no matter what. As soon as you get up in the morning, put your shoes on, you're going to have some safety issues no matter what. But you don't need to, you don't need to, you need to be very careful not to invite extra problems.
Does the National Wild Turkey Federation have a stance on reap hunting at all? Does it take one, or is it kind of staying off of that topic?
I believe that is kind of defaulting to state-by-state regulations.
Okay. They're kind of leaving that alone.
Right.
Have they ever featured it in any of the... By the way, the magazine, is it called The Call?
The Turkey Call.
Turkey Call. The new format.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh, man. We're so modernized now. Like, one of the things I think is really important, we were really proud with the first season of WildFed, we had really dropped the demographic of our time slot on Outdoor Channel, the age demographic a lot by 15 years. And it's like, that's what we need to be doing is pushing towards, and I know some people are going to not like when they see things, they're going to see it as gentrification or something like that. Right. But the old magazine had more of that feel of like, the magazine the NRA puts out, where you're like, it's just like, I'm not that into it. The new Turkey Call magazine, the texture, that satin finish, the article quality, the storytelling, everything is just the way they're describing the conservation efforts. Right. It's an A plus, man.
Good. Glad to hear that. I will pass that along gladly.
The new logo, everything is really good. But so no stance on how to hunt, but have they ever featured reap hunting, or have they kind of stayed away from promoting it
I
at all?
can't recall that's been promoted.
I don't think I've ever seen it promoted.
I can't recall that's been seen.
I can understand, yeah.
But no, we definitely are all about promoting, a good, safe hunting experience that people want to go back out and do again. It's you're going out and speaking another language. You're going to strange country and trying to talk their turkey speak.
Yeah, exactly.
But to that point, like you mentioned the gobble tube and and the reaping and everything, that there are other ways to incite that tom to tom violence. And I think I probably talked about this on maybe the second time I was on with you, about using more of the Jake yelps and the tom call, the tom yelps. There are still some folks that don't realize that toms and hens all speak the same language. They all have that vocabulary of 28 vocalizations. It's just that the tom is well known for that robust gobble, that iconic haunting gobble. Yeah. So, by speaking, like trying to sound like a Jake without giving up your location as a gobble to other hunters, and sometimes it's, can be a safety thing. Other times it's, I don't necessarily want to get that bird that's out in front of me to gobble too much if I'm in a public area. Because I do a lot of hunting on areas that's not posted, that's open to other folks.
Sure, there's other folks there.
Yep. So,
you just did a little turkey call there almost.
Right. I try to make sure that, if I have a bird going, I don't want to necessarily get him gobbling a lot, because it broadcasts, hey, there's another turkey over here. And if I'm working him, the little selfish part of me is like, hey, I want to keep this guy coming in, and
it's hard on that. Like when you're driving around, when I'm not hunting, I want to see the hunting world grow. But when I'm out there in the morning and I see other trucks, I'm not like excited about those other trucks. I don't have that like, oh great, it's really growing. That's like, I don't always feel that way.
That's one of the dichotomies of it all. As a general rule, we want, the more hunters that we have, the more dollars are raised, for conservation through organizations like ours, but also like Pittman Robertson dollars. We fund hunting, and we fund a lot of conservation efforts and everything. I mean hunters, hunters and fishermen, and
a lot of habitat is protected because we hunt.
Yeah.
And back to our earlier point, the chances of hunting sort of being lost are lessened when there's more people involved. Correct. And especially more diverse. It's one thing, it's one demographic like that's kind of stereotypical, but when you start getting people from diverse sectors of life involved, that's a much broader network and a lot harder to sort of defeat that. And so it is important.
Right. And I mean, this is something that I've always felt is that hunting should not be something that, like you said earlier, falls along a political fault line. Right. I mean, it should, I know some really tremendous hunters who believe very deeply on either side of the aisle. And I think it's great. Yeah. And that kind of diversity is what we need. One component of society is probably not going to be enough to carry us forward. And if you look at it from a generational standpoint, the boomer generation is aging out. And they were that large demographic. And they, typically like with license sales, once they hit about that 65, 68, 70-year age, the license sales drop off.
They got to be really into it, really hardcore to keep going.
Right. So what we're trying to do, like with the rebrand and with everything, and is trying to bring in folks on the other side of that, and not only bring in just, we don't want just bodies. We want people that are going to get out and enjoy and recreate and really get into it and not be intimidated because, well, I didn't grow up hunting, so I don't know if I should get into it. Absolutely. Yeah. And turkey hunting, like you said, is one of those activities that you don't need to be a rocket scientist. You can get out and with fairly limited knowledge and grow that knowledge.
Yeah.
Both on a like the broad level, like, I learned more about turkeys, but also you can learn more specifics about, I learned that tom likes to roost in that tree. And so if I alter my morning hunt to go over there, that could be more, so the specifics as well as the broader.
Yeah. A lot easier to penetrate into that world than deer hunting was for me. I found deer hunting is a lot more complex. It's a lot harder to really, like, it's a more communal. It can be more communal to turkey hunt. It's really easy to go out with folks in the morning. Whereas deer hunting, I tend to want to be more solitary. It's not those long sits like we have in the Northeast. It's a lot easier to deal with the game after. It's just a really good entry point. But
well, I was going to say, plus you get the ability to, like you said, to share that with others, but the interaction with that gobble, like I set that as a baseline for a lot of new hunters, or if I'm taking kids out or anybody, I'll say, hey, our benchmark for success is if we can interact with a bird.
Yeah.
If we can call, if we can get a bird to respond, and we're in the game, that's a win. That's a successful hunt.
You feel like you are directly communicating. That bird is communicating with you, and something clicks inside you, like, I can do this.
Very much so. Yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful feeling. All right, so I walk into Cabela's this time of year, Bass Pro Shop or wherever, Gander Mountain or whatever it is. Walk in, and this time of year, it is gear overwhelm. And if I don't know that almost all this gear falls into some simple categories, and it's usually maybe one thing out of each category or something like that, if I don't know that, man, I just am going to feel bowled over by it all. Right? It's like going into Barnes & Noble and being like, I'm going to get a book. It's
right. Information overload.
Yeah, so let's talk through the gear a little bit. What are like the real core essentials as you see it, and then after we can get into some accoutrements. Yeah.
I'm going to start literally on the ground level. A good pair of waterproof boots, comfortable feet, and keeping in mind that in May, when most of the turkey seasons up in here in the Northeast happen, you're going to have a lot of, even if it's a beautiful morning, you could be walking in the dew.
Yeah.
A lot of dewy fields, and so I've learned that lesson by having cold, wet feet early on in the day. And then having wet socks as you're trying to cover ground is not so much fun. So,
and it can get cold sometimes.
And it can be chilly. A good pair of I would say waterproof boots. I like a pair of rubber boots that have like I'll spend a little extra for the insoles so that I'm comfortable.
Yeah. It's like bogs, mucks, lacrosse, something like that.
Any of those are really good. The next thing would be camouflage. It's not a necessity, but like you alluded to earlier, turkeys have color vision. They have excellent vision and excellent hearing. They will pick up on movement from a pretty ridiculous distance away. I like to wear, I'm a little bit of a gearhead when it comes to all this stuff. I like gear. I like stuff. And a lot of this comes down to whatever your comfort level is with how much you want to carry, how much you don't want to carry. Camo is something that I like to wear. You can get by with like earth tone colors. It's a certainty. I know there are a couple turkey hunters out there that will go out in a Hawaiian shirt just because, because. Yeah.
Sure,
and,
sure.
And like I said, covering your face and your hands is important because that's the place where you're going to have a lot of movement. Whether it's running a turkey call with your hands or whether it's swatting a mosquito off your nose, which is another little gear plug right there. If you don't have a thermocell, if you're not familiar with it, I'd look it up and try to get one because they are really helpful in the early spring as far as black flies and mosquitoes.
Late into the turkey season.
Right into turkey season.
But typically the first part of the turkey season, because turkey season's where it's like the beginning's great, by the end the ticks are out, by the end the mosquitoes are out.
And that brings another point. There are some commercially available permethrins that you can do a one-time spray on your camo pants and let it dry. Don't let it touch your skin. But tick checks are important. Yeah. That's just, for me, that has become just a way of life.
Yeah, just a way of life.
Just when I'm done with a turkey hunt, I'll just I have a tote in the back of my truck, and I just take my, I'll usually have another pair of pants or something depending on the temperature, and I'll just kind of strip down at the truck, put them in the tote, and check them out, and put them in, and then get home and do the tick check. So
it's hard with they always say. The tick folks are always telling you wear light-colored clothing. It's like, well, hey, I'm wearing clothes that are very hard to find.
Very dark,
and modeled. And the 3D camo is one thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I just speak to sort of my own strategies. I'm like, I don't use any of the bug products, so that means I've got to...
You got to do a more...
Very serious about the checking.
Right.
Yeah, very, very serious and meticulous. But, I like... fingerless gloves.
Yes.
So I'll wear my wool fingerless gloves, and whenever I find a good source of those, I buy a pile of them because I was once in Peru and they had alpaca ones real cheap on the street for $2 a pair.
Oh my goodness!
And all these beautiful earth tones, and I bought probably 30 pairs and brought them home, and I slowly worked through. I went through my last pair this year. First Light's got some that I like, so I bought some from them, and then I found some other alpaca ones recently. But yeah, those fingerless gloves. So it's just my fingertips are out. That really and the wool has a nice matte finish.
Yes,
it doesn't shine.
It doesn't shine, right?
Because that's a big thing. I think you've probably noticed this. A lot of modern hunting clothes, because they're made out of that Under Armour kind of basketball short material, shine.
Can reflect light differently than the natural surroundings.
So I'll say to somebody like, okay, grab a camouflage tarp and put it over your wood pile and tell me how hard it is to see when it's reflecting sunlight at you like a mirror. It doesn't matter if it's camouflage, if it shines, especially to a bird who picks up on the iridescent shine of other birds' feathers.
Correct.
So try to find stuff with no shine. And then I often like, because I've got a zip-up 3D camo kind of ghillie top and hood that goes over my baseball hat, and so that the brim of the hat keeps it out over your face a little bit. Yep. And that's nice because I can wear sort of reasonably social clothes if I'm going to go out to breakfast, go to the post office, anything like that, and I can take that off.
Yep.
And
you're back to normal.
Close to normal as I can get, which can be nice too, and they're really lightweight. So I can put them on over anything.
I agree. There are several good different manufacturers that offer those, and that's what I have.
Yeah, I think in particular, even if I wasn't going to wear the top, it's just the hood of it. Because you've got to hide your face, and even I like having the shadow over my eyes because man, they will pick up on your eye movement. Even
they can, absolutely. Let's see, moving on up. So we've got boots and camo, gloves, face mask, the hat, the ghillie. And again, these are not all necessities, but they are they will help tremendously.
Yeah, more than with a lot of. I think of all of the hunting that I'm a part of, it's probably the most important. A deer, it's like as long as you're not moving usually, right? It's like once you move, but they're not necessarily that good at picking up on your clothes. I don't see it that way. I think a lot of times we wear camouflage to feel more playing the part or something, I mean, it has its utility, but turkey hunting, it seems really important to me.
Turkeys live and die by their eyes and their hearing.
Yeah. And they are so hunted by, I mean...
Well, and that I've said this before, is everything in nature likes a turkey meal. So...
Yeah, so you got to remain hidden. Okay, so maybe you want to talk weapons? Because I feel like that's probably where it's the most that's for some folks going to be the most intimidating part of the whole thing, or the most overwhelming part.
Right.
But with turkeys, it auto selects for some simplicity.
Right.
Because we're going to either hunt with a shotgun or we're going to hunt with archery tackle, right?
Correct. Yeah, here in the Northeast, those are our options, is either a shotgun or an archery tackle. If you're just getting into the sport, I would suggest a shotgun. And shotgun technology has come such a long way in the last 10 years. It kind of used to be the standard. If you were going to turkey hunt, you have to have a 12 gauge, and you have to have, a 3-inch Magnum with, number 5 shot, and that's just it.
If you don't shoot much, what he's describing is basically your most powerful setup.
Right.
You're getting the full Mack truck there.
Right. And there are, there's a 10 gauge, 12 gauge, 20 gauge, or 16 gauge. I'm going to hunt with a 16 this spring. I built one of those, so I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
And I'm a big fan of the 20 gauge.
Yeah.
And, then moving down the 28 gauge, some guys will hunt with a 28, and then the 410, as you mentioned.
Yeah, your little lipstick jobby there.
Right.
Man, I had somebody sell me on this the other day. They had me convinced, because they were saying the amount of... So shot. Let's back it up. So shot refers to there being lots of little pellets.
Yes.
Shots are like BBs of various sizes.
Correct. And materials.
In various materials. Good point. And the idea is I'm shooting out a cloud of these things rather than a single projectile.
Correct.
And this is most common with birds because they're a very rapid movement.
Right.
It's very difficult to, trying to take a 22 shot on a turkey head that's bobbing around would be very difficult. Right. Your chances of injuring the birds are high. And also, you're sending projectiles potentially very far, and shotguns tend to drop off. It's not rifled, so it tends to drop off very quickly.
Right.
Okay, so... Let's talk about shots, because let's talk about shotguns first. You brought up the 12 gauge, and for simplicity for people listening, we could probably leave out 16s and 28s because most people aren't. Those are obscure enough. But it's going to be a 12 gauge, a 20 gauge, or a 410 is probably what people are looking at, right? That feel fair?
Yep.
And I hunt a 12 gauge because if you want a extremely versatile shotgun that can do just about anything in any hunting venture, it's not a bad choice. But a 20 gauge is also a great choice for that too. Right. But I just happen to hunt a 12, but I shoot a Benelli, which is a very gentle shooting shotgun.
Correct. Right. So recoil has a function there as well. As if you're shooting a Benelli, your felt recoil is not going to be as abrupt.
But I have hunted. My first turkey hunt was with a Remington 870 and 12 gauge. Right. And that's a thumper.
Right.
And. So if you're smaller statured, if you have a fear of the recoil impulse, a lot of women, a lot of kids are going to want something. The first thing they're going to say is, I don't want a lot of kickback. Right. That's how they'll describe it. So I don't want that kickback. So if you're looking to reduce that, you're going to go up in number, right, from the 12 gauge to the 20 gauge or something like that.
So a 12, for everybody that's listening that doesn't know this, 12 gauge is a larger bore diameter. It refers to how many of a certain size.
How many spheres of lead you can make from, was it 1 pound?
Yes.
That would fit in the barrel. Very old school.
It's very old school. Yeah. So technically, like a 10 gauge is about as large a shotgun bore as you can get.
A lot of states will have laws like you can't shoot anything above the 10, right? Like that would be like that's your max.
Yeah. So the 12 gauge is really like has always been the gold standard. Yeah. But like I said, with the kind of the more recent advent of like tungsten super shot or TSS, that you're able to do more with less. So you're able to shoot within normal, and I say air quotes, normal turkey killing ranges, 35 yards, with a 12 gauge and a 20 gauge. Your 12 gauge is going to have the option or have the ability to deliver more of a payload of shot because it's a larger diameter. But from a kinetic energy delivery standpoint, if you're shooting number 9s, they're going to be, and number 9 is, again, the higher the number, the smaller the shot size that's being delivered. But a number 9 that's made out of tungsten is going to hit with a kinetic force of a number 5 in lead. And so a number 5 is going to be a larger projectile, but fewer of them. A 9
which matters, right?
Right.
Because like if you think about buckshot, let's say you've got 8 to 9 pellets in your double-aught buckshot.
Right.
Okay, so at close range on a person-sized target, that's no problem. But if you're shooting out 35 yards at a bird, the bird could just stand still and the shot might go all around it.
Right.
So the more, the higher the number of actual individual pieces of shot, the denser that cloud is, the more likely you are that something is going to impact a vital part of that turkey and knock it down.
And that's so key, is because all we want to do as sportsmen and women is to make a clean, ethical shot.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody that goes out with the desire to go out and not come home with a bird. Right. And it's something that we all want to be mindful of. And that ties back into something we wanted to talk about, was knowing your equipment. Know what your shotgun is. Say you're gonna shoot a shotgun for turkeys. Pattern it. Know what it's capable of. And know what yardages. Yeah. Know where your cutoff is.
Yeah.
So
wait. So I want to get ahead of ourselves yet. So, so the 12 gauge, great viable option. Probably you might have one in your house already. Yep. You might know somebody who has one. Yep. So that's pretty easy to access. 20 gauge is a little bit lighter, but with modern ammunition. There are certain hunts where I might prefer 12 gauge sea duck hunting, for instance.
Right.
These birds are super rugged. They're flying really fast. I want to hit them really hard.
Yep.
But boy, I watched my buddy knock plenty of them down with a 20 gauge.
Right.
So to me, I'm becoming convinced, just like back in the day, people, to climb Mount Everest wore huge leather boots and big wool coats and all this stuff. And today we're going lighter gear. Everything's getting lighter.
More streamlined.
Yeah, because the technology is getting more advanced. Right. I see that happening. And now we see the 410, which... you look at that little round and you're like, come on, that little shotgun shell. You're like, really? But it's got a lot of shot in it.
Right.
And with these metals that you're talking about, these alloys, tungsten, bismuth steel.
Right.
You're hitting them pretty hard with something pretty dense, and it apparently pretty effective even out at some of those similar, at least to 35 yards, right?
And again, that would be... there's another component to this which we don't have to go all the way down the rabbit hole with, but would be chokes and choke tubes. Yeah. That's something that's important to know, how your choke tube responds to the load that you're shooting, the shot size, and the gauge of the shotgun that you've got.
So you're talking about a little
it's a
piece,
constrictor. A constrictor, right?
Yeah. So you just think about a hose, like a garden hose, and you're spraying it, and then you turn that nozzle, tighten it down, and you get more of a beam, and you turn it the other way, and it loosens up to more of a cone.
Right.
And so shotguns have a similar kind of device that you screw in the end for different types of hunting and different types of distances and different types of rounds. And the turkey choke. What we're essentially doing is trying to shoot that gun more like a rifle, right? So it's like you picture wing shooting ducks, no sights usually, maybe a bead, but no sights on the shotgun. But now we're hunting with turkeys, we put sights on.
Right.
When I'm out duck hunting, I'm not going to have a sling on that shotgun. When I'm turkey hunting, I'm putting a sling on there like a rifle. Right. I'm putting sights on there. I'm putting a choke on there that's going to keep that pattern tighter so I can get it out a little further, and I'm going to aim that shotgun instead of point it. Right. So we kind of shoot it like it's a rifle, and we do little conversions to the shotgun to make it more rifle-like while still being a shotgun. That feel fair?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's a really good point as far as keeping the shot constricted as it's coming out of the shotgun. I've seen birds get missed completely at 10, 12 yards because the shot pattern is so dense at that range that it could go to the left or right of that head. And I want to throw that in there. When you're aiming at a turkey, a couple things, again, for safety, make sure you know what's behind it. But also, try to avoid collateral damage with other turkeys.
Yeah.
Make sure.
I've seen it.
Like, the ideal would be when a tom comes in, he breaks strut and he sticks his head up in range, and there's no hens, no other toms around him, where, and this is where, considering a one bird per tag situation, you want to aim right about where the skin of his head meets those feathers of his neck.
Yeah.
Hold that right on there, and that's where you want to shoot.
I like to set up a target. So to your point, because I want to know what the shotgun's doing if I'm going to take that shot, right? Yep. So to your point, what I like to do is set up a target, and I'll just use some big plain manila paper.
Yes.
And I'll just put a dot in the middle of it. So I have an aim point.
Yep.
And now I know what I'm shooting out of my shotgun, and I'm pretty dedicated. I've had really good results with the heavy shot. Trying to remember what they call the specific one, but anyway, it's by heavy shot. It's a bismuth tungsten.
Yep.
I like the idea of a non-lead. Even though we're not required the way we are with migratory birds, I like a non-toxic shot. Okay, so I will set out a target at 10 yards, shoot that spot, see what that pattern does, and I might shoot it with 5 different. I might go out and buy a box of several different boxes of different ammunitions that I would like to try.
Yep.
And then I'll see what they all do. Then I'll set that up at 20 yards, do it again. And I'll take photos of everyone, and then I line them all up, and I go, which of these shot patterns gives me what I'm looking for? I'm usually looking for, I feel good about my...
good even pattern.
Yeah, without holes in the pattern.
Right.
And I like density because I know I'm going to take a well-aimed shot.
Right.
So I would rather have a dense than diffuse. But like you said, maybe I find out that my shotgun shoots that one load a little bit to the left. And my buddy has the same shotgun, and it doesn't do that. Shotguns are finicky and
Very
weird.
finicky. Yep.
You got to find what they like to eat.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Well put. Well put.
So determining what your shotgun can do and what it does at different ranges. And another thing I learned on television, unfortunately, is just because you're punching holes in paper at 50 yards doesn't mean that you have the kinetic energy to punch through into something vital on a bird at that distance.
Yep.
And don't underestimate those feathers acting like a thin layer of armor.
They are armor. It is tank armor.
You might hit him at 50 yards, and he might just shrug those pellets off and fly away.
Yep.
So what would you say, when you're teaching somebody new, what do you tell them is sort of the max range of their shotgun?
I personally enjoy like the 35 yards with good gear.
Yeah.
Now that being said, you wouldn't want to take your shotgun out with some of Grandpappy's old number 6, light loads or whatever. I mean, you need to know what
They sell turkey rounds as turkey rounds,
specific
for
turkey
a
rounds.
Reason. Yeah, this is not really a gimmick.
Right.
I mean, obviously there are gimmicks in that world, but ultimately they're turkey rounds for a reason because this is a very specific type of bird. We're trying to do a very specific type of thing, and
you basically want to disconnect his central nervous system from his noggin.
Yeah.
So.
So well said. And it only takes one pellet. That's the thing. You got all these pellets. You just need one to get in there.
Right.
But yeah, patterning the shotgun and also if I'm going to bring out a new hunter, not only do I want them to see what the pattern is so that they know going into it.
Right.
I find hunting with a weapon that you're not sure about the zero on is a confidence destroying exercise. So knowing what your weapon does is crucial. But also, if you're taking somebody new out, it's good to see how they handle a weapon anyway, right? So it's good to see their handling skills and how they manage recoil and all those kind of things too.
Right.
Do you think you do some archery hunting? Is that worth? I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's probably a more advanced skill anyway.
It is an advanced skill.
Not necessarily a beginner thing, but
what I do, I mean, I love to archery hunt. I archery hunt deer, turkeys, bear, and it just extends my season. It's part of who I am. When it comes to archery hunting turkeys, I am extremely specific about what shots I take, only because I don't want to wound a bird. I don't want to take, an unnecessary shot or, so my success for archery hunting with turkeys is pretty low, but by design. It's just because I love doing it, but I don't want to. I don't want to put myself in a situation where why did you take that shot? So I keep my shots close. And there's always, do you go for a headshot with archery equipment, which some guys will do. And that's usually either a hit or a miss. There's not a lot of...
So you're not getting a lot of wounding.
Right.
But you're not talking about with one of those big guillotine heads. You just mean with a regular broadhead.
Right. So standard thought on that is that if you can deer hunt with it, it's good enough kinetic energy for a turkey.
Yep.
So as long as your deer setup, a lot of that can be transferred to turkey.
Obviously, you have a lot of disadvantages. One is that your shotgun, all you got to do is move your trigger finger, right? And you learn over the years how to hold your shotgun before they come in, because when a bird comes in and now he's so close you can't pick up the shotgun, you learn, like, keep that gun pointed, on a knee usually, pointed the direction where you think that bird's most likely going to come, so you can just, maybe you got to move an inch, but that's it.
Right.
But you're going to have to pop out and draw that bow, or draw that bow and pop out, right?
Right.
So there's the draw, that's a lot of movement. That's a challenge. You have the range challenge. You have the target challenge, which has to be very specific, right? So if you weren't going to take a headshot, what are
wing butt?
Wing butt, yeah.
About where the wing,
right where the wing attaches to the body. That's going to get you to that very small.
It's a small goodie basket in there.
Yeah, it sure is. Anyone who eats the giblets knows.
Yep.
And then straight up the cochlea kind of a shot.
Yep. Okay. That's the kind of the known as the Texas heart shot.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So you wait for him to turn around, strutting.
Right. Yep.
You hit him right in the bum.
Yep. A lot of the archery
and that'll
hunting,
just pass clean through him, I imagine.
Yep. The risk there would be on the way out that could be impacting your breast meat. Yeah. On the way through,
but cut anyway. Not
it's a cut, right?
Like
you're not going to devastate the whole
thing,
right?
I've talked a lot about that. Well, we'll get to it later, but I'm big on having a little metal detector, just finding shot.
That helps.
We'll get to that, but okay. So I just want to talk real quick about the 410, because guys were telling me that they felt the pattern was really, really dense. There's a lot of pellets,
right?
And what I like about it is you can put it. A child can shoot it.
Very minimal recoil. It opens up, a pretty good amount of experience that a smaller framed person may not have been able to get to experience.
Yeah. And then I've got a buddy his whole thing now is he wants to go into the woods with the lightest gear that he can go in with. So he's going in. He's got he started off with a single shot 410, but now he's got a semi-auto that runs a inertia system like a Benelli. Yeah. I mean, it's a super sweet little gun.
Oh, it is.
It's very cool.
Very light, no recoil.
Very light to carry. Very nice.
I mean, there's always going to be that component of hunters that are like, you know what? It's, I'm going to hunt with a stick bow and cedar arrows. It's that, I'm going to hunt with a 410 because I can.
Add the challenge.
It's a little more challenge. And, and with that comes you just have to make sure you know what your capabilities of your equipment are.
So test your equipment before you go out.
Yes.
And another component today that we have to mention, because it's so common, is like the shortage of ammunition. I'm buying my ammunition way out in advance. I had my turkey ammunition 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars up front, but I will, so that I don't not have it later, or have to use inferior ammunition later, or to have to repattern, because let's face it, if you're going to go pattern, you're going to go through boxes of expensive ammunition. I mean, that's why sometimes I would rather buy a new rifle and put a new scope on it than change a scope off a rifle, because now I got to re-zero and I got to start shooting my good hunting ammunition again. Yeah, I hate that. Yeah. You're like, every time I pull the trigger, it's $2 or $5. Or, I mean, with these turkey rounds,
some of them are $8 or $10 each
a piece. So we kind of want to just figure out what works, buy a bunch of it, sit on it. You're not going to lose money on it.
It doesn't go bad. It doesn't get stale.
And it's not, the prices aren't going down anytime soon. I don't see it.
So for the 16 gauge that I just built, I have some number 6 regular, heavy pheasant loads, which I wouldn't turkey hunt with, but as far as getting onto paper, and at least it takes a little of the sting away.
Because you shoot a red dot, right?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
I'd like to talk about that too.
I like that, and one other thing that has increased my turkey success is either keeping that gun on your knee, or even having a monopod with you.
Sure.
I will keep a monopod either in my vest or whatever. And so if you get into that situation where you've got a turkey coming and you can't set up with your knee up and be in the ready position, because like you said, their eyes are really good, and the odds of you getting a gun up when the turkey is within range, it's pretty tough odds. So
and your chances of hitting one that knows you're there and is on the run, it's real low. Like your chances of catching up to one, I mean, it just once they're gone,
once the gig is up, that's kind of like it's kind of over. But so, I will use a red dot, and a lot of that is I have a lot of folks that I share I share my guns with, new hunters, and so I want it to be the easiest, cleanest experience possible. So in some of those cases, like the term cheek weld, where you want to make sure you have your cheek down on the gun, for a new hunter, it's not as critical. As long as that red dot is where we want it, and you squeeze the trigger. It takes quite a while in the grand scheme of things for that load of shot to go down the barrel. So if during that time after you squeeze, you drop your barrel or you pick it up to look or anything like that, you are affecting that shot and where it's going to be delivered.
Yeah, and the shot's not all out at once. It's coming out more like a stream as opposed to a single projectile, which comes out very fast and as one thing. But you're putting out a stream of pellets. I want to just make a couple comments on the red dot. And I actually don't have a red dot on my shotgun, but I am a red dot shooter, and I came up shooting in the era when red dots came into being and were taken seriously. And so I've watched the whole thing in other shooting disciplines that I'm a part of, and I'm a pretty serious pistol shooter, and I shoot red dots on my pistols. And right now I'm watching in the shooting world this argument take place about, should you learn on IR sights? Should you learn on a red dot? And it's kind of like my first car was a stick shift. And at the time, I thought it was a good thing to learn. Like, hey, you probably should learn this. It would be silly today to try to say, not only would it be silly, like, you should learn on a stick shift. It's like, where would you even find a stick shift?
At this point, where
you don't need to learn on a stick shift. With the discipline of shooting iron sights, you have essentially three focal planes. You've got your target, your front sight, and your rear sight. And you have to focus on your front sight to get the most accurate hit, which means your rear sight's out of focus and your target's out of focus. And your brain doesn't like to work like that. It wants to look at the target. So the nice thing with the red dot is you have one focal plane. You're not looking at the dot. You're looking at the target, and the dot's superimposed on it. And there's no parallax. So that dot can be in any part of the window. It doesn't have to be, right centered up like it would be with your scope. To me, I think it's okay to start there now. And people are changing their mind. These have become very reliable. Like anything, they're prone to mechanical failure, battery failure.
That's the biggest thing is, but a lot of these now have a sleep function where, after a time of inactivity, it'll shut off.
Yeah, shake awake I've got on mine. And 50,000 hours of battery life or whatever they have. And I just think that this is a more instinctive way, like archery used to be prior to the sight pins, like you'd look at your target. Now we're like very fixated on our sights, which gives us precision and you can trust it. But the dot seems to be, because even the bows are going to the dots. You must be seeing that. Have you been?
I haven't really. I've seen some of them.
I was
but
up at
I
LL Cody the other day, and oh my goodness,
they have a red dot on the.
A dozen of them. Yeah, Garmin's big in it now, and in fact they've got it where on your compound bow or crossbow, your dot is also got an integrated rangefinder. And it moves the dot, and then after you shoot, it will tell you the GPS location of where it thinks you hit, so you can start your blood trail.
Wow.
I mean, it's getting very advanced, and we obviously have to ask ourselves, like, how far do we want this stuff to go? But I think the dot's a really practical thing, and it's really good for people with eyesight issues, eyes that are aging out, things like that.
But new hunters as well.
Fantastic.
If you as a new hunter go out and all you taste is frustration from missing a bird or wounding a bird, you're better off to say, okay, let's start here at least, and then once you get your feet under you and get the feel for it, if you wanted to go away from the red dot, that's fine.
I can't imagine anybody going. I'm going back to a stick shift. A better. I mean, it is a better tool. It's more technological, but it is a better tool.
And my metric for that is if I can kill what I'm trying to take the most effective way with the least amount of suffering. then that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Yep, I like that. So I think the dot's great. Otherwise, it's helpful to put sights on your gun. Obviously, you could look down the rib of your shotgun or use your bead.
Or use the bead, right?
But
which I've done. For like you said, I had the old Remington 870 with the bead. And,
it's not like it doesn't work.
It absolutely works, but there's a lot more room for potential failure.
Yeah. Yep. Now with the dot, what I'll say is, let's say that dot sits 2 inches over your bore. Now you've got your shot's got to climb 2 inches to intercept that dot. So now sighting that in and
right,
you could hand me a gun with a bead. I'd be more comfortable going out without patterning that than I would something that has sights or something that has a dot. Know. That's really got to get patterned.
Yep.
So
definitely.
That said, let's talk about calls, because that's the other one. How many aisles of calls in the big box stores?
So many calls. Yep. Just for the newer folks, the basic turkey calls are a box call, which is a great one for a beginner, but I hunt with a box call, and I've been doing it this is 38 years of turkey hunting for me coming up this spring, and I still hunt. I actively hunt with a box call. Pot calls, which are your slate calls, glass. There's a lot of different surfaces, ceramic, aluminum.
It's a
disc
surface
with a soundboard underneath it with a wooden peg, and it's a friction call. Slate is probably one of the most, I'll say, stable as far as that goes. So you're creating a sound with friction. And it's like a little musical instrument, because there's a little, a soundboard for resonance inside that wooden disc or plastic or whatever you end up with. And so you can create a lot of different turkey sounds on that. There's the diaphragm call, it's a mouth call. So it's a little aluminum horseshoe, basically, with some stretched latex or prophylactic material in there, stretched to certain tensions, and those tensions and then the cuts that are put into that will allow air to travel over the palate, the roof of your mouth, more. And so there's like a tape that's cut out to shape of the inside of the roof of your mouth. So by effectively you're putting that into the roof of your mouth and blowing air up over it, almost like instead of blowing out a candle, it's like you're trying to warm up your hands. There's a difference in how that air comes up over. And so you want to pull that air from your diaphragm and blow it up the back of your throat and up over and vibrate those reeds in that mouth call. And you can create a very large amount of turkey sounds with that. Again, two things, safety, choking hazard. Just be careful if you're excited and you've got a mouth call in and you make a big gulp, be careful. But also, a lot of those will have a latex component to them. So anybody with a latex allergy, be real mindful of that.
I'm always thinking about, I guess I just get worried about the toxicity of things, and like mine, I'm prefer a diaphragm call, so that's almost exclusive of what I hunt with besides my gobble call. But when they're new, I like to really clean them with soap and water. Yeah. And then I'll find, as I mouth them a lot, like bits of the adhesive will come out between the layers, and I'm always trying to pick that out so I don't swallow it, because it's like 3M brand, whatever, toxic or chemical or whatever. But each one has advantages and disadvantages.
Oh, it really does.
Is there any other?
Oh, yeah, there's several.
I know there's several others, but if we were sticking to the main things that people are going to start with.
Like the wing bone calls. I'm a wing bone guy, but that's kind of down the road. That's essentially making having a turkey call that's built out of the 3 wing bones of a turkey.
I mean,
they're
amazing.
Well, one thing to keep in mind with that, if you're listening to this and you're new to the turkey hunting field, don't discount down the road using a wing bone, because that's a sound that's not produced really by a lot of other commercially available calls, and turkeys will respond to that. And then there are other more eclectic type of turkey calls, but those are your big 3.
Those are the big 3
that most people are going to do.
I'd say that.
With your box call, you can do the Yelp very effectively, which is kind of a 2-tone note, a keyok kind of, and it has that high-low note, and that can be conveyed by the turkey world in a lot of ways. That's their general way of communicating, and the tone and tenor with which you're delivering that, and the excitement level or lack of excitement level, really has a lot to do with the message that you're delivering as a turkey caller.
Now that box call, one of the advantages I've noticed with it is it can reach out pretty far.
Yes.
Like my mouth call is very limited by the amount of air I can push through my diaphragm. But boy, especially if you're trying to locate birds way out in the distance, if you're walking ridges or something like that, boy, especially some of the big ones. Yeah.
Right.
My friends got one called like the battleship or something. I mean, the thing is enormous, but yeah, it reaches out there.
Yep.
Downside, they get wet and often... I know there's some, like I have one
there
called...
some,
they're often
wet hand,
they're
or
the lewdly named.
Yes.
I have one called the wet box.
Yes,
like,
I've got that. I think I've got that same one.
Yeah. But typically when they get wet, they tend to not produce as much sound.
Correct.
Right?
And that goes for a lot of other surfaces. Ceramic, though, in a ceramic pot call, that's one that you can play wet.
Okay. In the pot calls, I don't have enough experience with them, but my impression of them is what people like about them is the subtlety and nuance that they can produce.
Correct. And I said this before. Turkey calling is almost akin to golfing in that you have a long game and a short game. The long game is like you're talking about with a box call. You can reach out and, I hit a series of yelps out there. Oh, I heard a gobble over there. But when it comes time to actually, you're in the final bubble, you're working that bird. You want to be working the softer sounds. Yeah. And turkeys don't, and this is something I wanted to touch on, kind of what to say, but also what not to say. There are some times when you're working a bird that you're better off just to scratch some leaves than to make a full-on series of loud yelps.
Because overcalling loud yelps is the classic amateur move. Right?
It is, and I will say
I'm good at that. By the way.
Oh, me too. Well, we all want to hear that gobble, and it's kind of like that Pavlovian conditioning that if I make this turkey sound, that bird's going to gobble, and that makes me feel good because it releases all those brain chemicals. But what we have to kind of realize is by us as a hen, again, air finger quotes, making those hen sounds, that bird is thinking that we're going to go to him. And so if we play out our auditory theatrics as a hen over here, and he's gobbling over there, he's basically saying, I'm staying here, you come here. That's the way it goes. If you can convince him, and I've referred to this before as like high school tactics, that either A, there's another Tom over here, or that, she's just not that interested in you, dude, kind of thing. By just going back to more of the casual feeding calls, like, the purrs and the light clucks and putts and stuff like that.
The shifting leaves around.
Yeah, moving the leaves around, because turkeys don't walk around 24/7,
right,
just making all the turkey sounds. They just will spend quite a bit of time preening and just being quiet and all that.
I love them so much.
I know.
Carter.
I know. If you can just convince that Tom that he needs to come over and visit you, that's where the magic happens.
So the slate allows you a lot of that, like subtle
the
purring,
real soft, that
almost like far away sounding sometimes too. Like if you want it to be real quiet, you can get as quiet as you want.
You can go very quiet. And one thing to keep in mind: turkeys are doing trigonometry all the time.
It's unbelievable.
All the time. So the way their ears are set up, they can triangulate a sound to within 3 or 4 feet.
That's why I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they move before the bird gets there because he's coming. Like, I guess what I want to say is, don't worry, the bird knows exactly where you are.
Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of times, like, oh, maybe he thinks I'm over there. Like, maybe he can't hear me from here. It's like, he knows where you are. If he's not there right now, it's because he's taking his time or he's not interested. But he knows where you are.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to. And it's weird because for me, it's hard. Like, if he turns around, I'll think he's just.
Very good point.
He could be 50 yards away and sound 300 yards away by turning around,
just the
calling in the other direction. And then he turns, you're like, oh my God, he's right there.
He's right there again.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and it's absolutely, it's so easy to to kind of read the auditory signals incorrectly.
But they seem to be good at it.
They're really good at it. Another point that I wanted to make is when I've got a bird going and he's gobbling, you can take his temperature. You can kind of get a feel for how he's responding to your calling. And I will often, if I'm feeling like he's really spun up and he's excited, against that urge to want to keep hearing him gobble, I will oftentimes just put my call down and just get my gun up, because if he stops gobbling, one of two things is happening. He's either figured out something's wrong and he's gone, he's leaving, or more likely, when they go quiet, that's when I get the most excited.
It's right there.
Because the next sound that you can hear is probably that, the spit drum. Oh boy, he's coming, he's here.
Do you have the ability to make that noise? It's like it's such a that's it. It's so weird. I like a mouth call. I hunt in all the ways that people say don't. I move a lot. I'm on the run. I hunt with a fan. I gobble call, and I'm not suggesting people do all that, but I do, and that's why I like a mouth call, because my hands are free. I'm often picking up decoys. I'm putting them in a bag, and I'm running over here. I'm running over there. For me, I never have to manipulate the call except with my mouth.
Right.
And so I don't have all the skill of all those different calls and the advantages of them, but I've done pretty well with the mouth call, and it starts probably in the next week or two. I started, driving around with one and just practicing in the car every time I'm in it, or annoying my wife here or whatever. But I really like a mouth call because I just find it really versatile. Like it's a great working tool, and I don't need to move my hands around. Right. So even when the bird's really close, I can get
you can still make the sounds
behind that mask I'm wearing.
And another thing that I've, in my time of playing with mouth calls and everything, by flipping it over with your tongue in your mouth and playing it essentially upside down, you can get different sounds. You can get a cleaner.
Oh, no way.
So if you're playing,
you've got a flat reed,
right?
And
you've got a flat reed and then a cut reed, right? And so if you're playing it, normally, and you're getting that rasp out of it, what I've done quite often is I will, if I need to change it up without being able to move, if I want to sound like multiple birds, I will flip that over with my tongue and play the real sweet, clean side. So you've essentially got two different turkeys that you're able to work with without changing the call. Yeah. The other thing is, for the listeners that are not familiar, there's a call called, or a vocalization called the kiki, which is a 3-note, I just hit my puberty there, I guess. It's basically, so it's a 3-note whistle. And if you flip that mouth call over and play that clean side, you're a lot more able to reproduce that sound.
Okay.
Because there's less air that's needed to blow the reeds, because you're playing that bottom reed.
Right. Man, I've never even tried that.
Yeah, try that.
And then folks are gobbling pretty well on them. I mean, I spend probably about an hour a year practicing, and I've never got a gobble that I would take into the field. Right. But I've heard some people do some very realistic gobbles on a mouth call.
Yeah, I would
love. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the basics of it, but I haven't really got anything, like I said, good enough to actually put into play.
Well, there are some really talented gobblers in New England. I'll say that. Some of the guys.
It goes deep, this game, doesn't it? That means, though, that I end up carrying a gobble call, which are the most obnoxious. I find these things embarrassing to have around. This big old floppy thing.
Right.
And that's a call that is hard to make without a lot of hand movement.
You have to have a lot of movement with that. Yeah.
And I find what I often do is I hold up the fan, and then I'll beat it against my chest behind the fan. If the bird's close and I want him to run toward me, then he can't see that's happening. But that call tends to stay in a cargo pocket, and I always disassemble it, the reed from the air baffle
so
because
that
it'll go off in my pocket.
Right.
But that's the other call that I carry, and because like you said, I find what I'll often do is I'll hen call, get him interested, and then I'll turn that call facing the other direction and gobble it. So it sounds like there's a gobbler coming
away,
from 180 degrees from him.
Right.
And I find that'll get him very often.
Ventriloquism is one of those things that it's a pretty handy tool for this.
Yes.
Another sound that's effective, and you got to be really careful with how you use it from a sight picture point, is the fly down sound. So when a turkey flies down or flies up, they're going to make a pretty good amount of sound. They're loud. They're a cannonball with wings. Yeah. They've got just that flop, 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 flop. Which, like you said, when you get to witness that, see it, hear it, it's awesome. But what I've been able to do is, as long as you know that you're not within sight and you want to mimic that fly down, taking your hat and just flap, 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 flap against your thigh works pretty well.
All right. I got a buddy who stitched dowels into
in fabric.
Yeah, he's got a piece of camouflage fabric.
That works really well.
Beats that thing.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So you'd use that in the context of you want the tom to think hens have flown down.
Hens have flown down, right.
Okay, and it's time for him to wipe the sleep out of his eyes
Exactly.
and
come on over. And that's another whole component right there is the hen talk on the limb. Yeah. That soft, sleepy, early morning talk. I've been able to set up sometimes on purpose, sometimes not, right underneath birds.
Amazing, right?
And so to get to be witness to all the really subtle, soft talk that they all can hear. There's
a lot there. Right?
There's a lot going on. And unless you're within 30 yards right under them, you're probably not going to be able to pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, just even when a hen gets real close to you and you hear, you're like, oh, all that's been going on. I'm only hearing these gross, loud overtones or whatever.
Which can, in the long run, make you a better turkey caller because you're able to apply that intel to...
Well, I would say that's when I realized the benefit of the slate,
the soft
pot call, because you hear all those little soft purrings and stuff.
The whines and the little...
What about decoys? What's your sort of general recommendations for folks? And I want to say, too, that they are extremely effective, but not 100% necessary.
Correct.
And I worry that this is one of these activities that you come into. I was joking on a show recently about how in our era, every sport has a shoe. Right. Every sport has a whole costume you're supposed to, and you can't play even where it has no benefits. You don't need a polo shirt to play golf at all, but you only play golf with a polo shirt, and typically it's going to be pastel in color. Why? I don't know, but that's the uniform. And so you come into turkey hunting, and it's like, I need all this stuff. And decoys, good ones, are expensive, and they're not the most. They're cumbersome to carry into the field.
There's some bulk
they're
there.
Just straight goofy.
So it's for me, it's an investment of energy, and it's going to be determined by how the hunt. I feel that hunt is going to play out specific to me for that day, for the information that I have. So, and that's the nice thing about turkey hunting. There's so many different styles. I know guys that like you are more of that on the move, run and gun. And you're going to keep going until you get a bird to gobble and then work him. I know other guys that are very successful that will set up a ground blind and set a couple of decoys out, and that's how they hunt from half hour before sunrise till noon. And that's it. And they kill birds, and they're very successful, and that's how they like to do it. Is one wrong and one right? Nope. It's like fishing. You can get a worm and a bobber and catch fish, or you can get a multi-$1,000 fly rod and catch fish. It's to the extent that you
and how utilitarian versus I have a friend who's been coming on the podcast recently, and we've been chatting a lot by text, and I realized this thing talking to him recently that I was like, wow, I mean, I guess this is probably obvious to anybody who listens to this show, but it's like, this is really about food for me. And for him, he is a hunter, man. It is like the philosophy of hunting permeates his bloodstream in a way that I'm like, oh, that's not actually my interest, you know? And so, but to a degree it is, but not to the level. He's way more on that side, and I'm like way more utilitarian. So at the end of the day, you got to decide what you're there for and what you're trying to accomplish. And because for some people, the kink is the finesse with which you accomplish it, right? So
Right.
for the fly fisherman,
Right.
it's not just catching that fish,
Right.
it's how they caught it, and often like how much preparatory work and planning and knowledge and all that finesse.
Right.
And so turkey hunting has a really similar thing. I mean, even down to the vest with all the pockets.
Exactly.
And
Right.
and for some folks, it's about that. And so if that's what it is, because I could see. Like I run and gun, but I bring typically I'll just run with a hen on my back in a bag.
Yep.
But if I know I have put birds to bed, then I'll bring out the Jake and I'll have the breeder hen and I'll set up my whole little scene, in the morning and I'll do all that too. Yep. So I love all those things. But if that doesn't work for some reason, then I'm probably just bringing the hen. I'll have the other ones in the car.
Right.
And I'll run into the woods in another spot or whatever. So, but I don't really care. Like sometimes I'll have that hen with me, and something happens where I never need it, and that's great too. And I just kind of don't care how it happens. But I could see being of the mindset where it's important to me how it happens. And so all that has to, I think a person needs to consider what they're after.
Right. And a lot of that comes with where you're, what your goals are, where your experience levels are.
Yep.
I read many years ago about the evolution of a hunter, the 5 different stages.
Yep.
You start out, your main focus is you want to fill the tag. And then at the end, as you progress down that road,
teach others,
it's more important about teaching others and sharing experiences with others.
Yep.
And some of my best turkey hunts have been ones that I wasn't the trigger guy.
Yeah.
The most memorable hunts were the ones where I was just there. I was a fly on the wall, being able to watch somebody's skills at work, and I love seeing.
It's fun, right? Actually remember hunts that I've guided friends on. I remember the hunts better than they do, and they were the shooter. But I'll bring things up. They'll be like, "Oh, I don't remember that happening." It's like, "Oh man, that was like the best part for me." Yeah, I see that too.
But like to go back to your question on decoys, the early season. I love a laydown hen and like a half or quarter strut Jake.
Yeah. So the laydown hen, she looks like she's about
laydown
to
hen
breed.
Is right. And the benefit of doing that in the early season is like you want to be in an area that's open, and again, taking safety into consideration, you want to make sure that you're safe, that it kind of passes the smell test to make sure that you're not going to have people coming up from behind you, shooting over your head or shooting into your because you said these decoys are very realistic.
More and more they're getting
very, very realistic. So you just want to have that air of caution in your mindset as you're setting up. But I like with a short grass, early May, I like that lay down hen and kind of a puny, runty half strut. Like he doesn't quite have the nards to go full strut.
But no one's around to stop him.
So
what are you going to do about it, Tom?
Right, exactly. And I've had that be a very, very successful part of the puzzle.
Yeah. I'll sometimes I have a set like that, and then I'll sometimes bring more. Like I might have a lookout hen who's kind of off to the side a little bit, and she's kind of looking around, and he's over here trying to breed, and get a whole bunch of them going. Right. Use inflatable decoys then?
Typically, yeah. Just they come in the olive bag and just
those
throw them in.
AVNXs, those are nice ones. Man.
They're really nice. They're pricey,
my bags
though,
are so bloody because I use those as my squirrel bags.
I'll
put squirrels in there, so mine are nasty.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is just because you've got a decoy out doesn't mean that's a slam dunk.
Yeah,
I've had times where I have a Jake decoy and a hen, and Tom comes in up over the hill, sees that Jake decoy, and just turns around and goes the other way because, I've seen, especially last year, where, like I was alluding to earlier, we're going to have a lot of 2-year-olds on landscape this year. Last year we had a lot of Jakes, and those Jakes are, the old strength in numbers. On a couple of different occasions, I watched Jakes beat up adult Toms.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
Wow.
Big time. Because everybody's jostling for that top of the pecking order.
Yeah.
And these little, punk Jakes
running in like little gangs.
Running in little wolf packs.
Yeah. No way.
Yep. Oh, I've watched that, and just the wing, the beat down, the neck wrapping and the wing beats. And I've seen that a few times last year, particularly just because, a higher amount of Jakes on the scene.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty awesome when, like sometimes you see the angle that a tom's coming in, he's just picking up maybe the head of your decoy or something like that, and you just watch him like lock on to that, and now you know from your position if you need to make a little move or adjustment, his focus is like on that bird, and once he believes that bird is, or a hen, I've seen the same thing. I mean, once, because you'll see the hens come into the decoys too, and especially if she's not liking the idea of there being another hen there.
Exactly.
But once they lock on, I've had it where I'm doing all kinds of like movements and like they won't even look over at me, and you have to stand up and walk to them for them, like they're just focus locked. So that's where, to me, that's like one of the biggest benefits is that it distracts them from what's happening, you know, in the L-shaped ambush where you are.
Right. You know? Yeah. It's one of those tools in the toolbox.
Yeah. I wish there was a way to carry them a little bit more lightly, but you know, the good ones are.
I was going to say you could go back to the old, the old foamies.
No, but yeah, they just a lot of volume. You know, but they're light or whatever.
Well, and that goes with, you know, as we get later into the season, and it's typically warmer, I will oftentimes kind of change up my vest situation or, you know, how I'm dressed, because it could be 40 degrees in the morning, but it'll be 70 by the time you walk, 75 by the time you're walking out.
Right.
You know, so I like to have a little variability there.
But you said like a lay down hen and a quarter strut jake in the early season. What would your spread look like, or how would it change as the season progresses?
I tend to kind of go with like a feeder hen. Like if I'm going to just go one, you know, I typically, if I'm going to do some run and gun, I'm not going to carry a full spread of decoys. I'll have just one, and that's usually going to be probably the feeder hen as more of a confidence. You know, I watched kind of an interesting phenomenon last year, 2 different times, 2 different areas, where third week in the season, third week in May, we had, 9 in one case and 7 in the other, red-headed birds, jakes and toms, within 50, 60 yards that had zero interest in calls. Absolutely did not care one iota. We could watch their body language every time we'd put a call out. It was
because a lot of times you call and you'll see something in their feathers.
Right? Yeah,
it's like they aren't in control. Their body moves to the call, but without them thinking about it. Right.
And this was, we might as well have been 300 miles away.
Wow.
And it was interesting, and that was 2 different locations, separated by probably 20, 25 miles from each other. But they had gotten into almost like a summertime flock, and they had. They'd worked out their business for the day.
It shifted into another sort of...
And it had been warm. It was, you know, getting into the third week in May, and so they were, you know, pretty warm temps, and they gobbled pretty well on the limb, but once they flew down, they didn't really seem to be too keyed up about it. Now, that being said, I feel that was kind of specific to that day, and that barometric pressure and all the other factors that can really get down the rabbit hole, but yeah, they you know, I ended up working birds from those flocks on other days after that.
Right.
So it's not like, you know, the one and done, like, oh boy,
it's over.
Right, it's all done.
Because you'll hear hens trying to get bred real late in the year sometimes.
Oh yeah. And that kind of leads into one thing I wanted to say. I will get this phone call just about every year, or an email. You need to start the turkey season earlier so that we can have a chance. Well, the way, especially up here in the Northeast, the way turkey seasons are set is so that about 55 to 60% of the breeding has occurred before we start the season. And that goes back again to that using our resources wisely. Right. We could have a heck of a season if we opened up on April 1st. Yeah. I mean, it would be crazy, but it would probably be very short-lived.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be sustainable.
Declining.
Right. So, I feel like turkey management here in the Northeast has been really solid.
People say that about almost anything. There's all, no matter how they run the regulations, there's always a contingent who has a reason, sometimes a good one, but it's like, that's just a nonstop thing.
Well, I mean, what I find as far as gobbling is that it's almost like the sine wave, so that there's almost like two peaks of it. And yeah, you'll have a peak that could be the early part, mid-April, and they'll be they're strutting and trying to breed now.
Yeah.
And it's middle of March here, and
they starting to break off now. I saw a lot of groups of just toms dragging beards the other day, and
they're starting to come out of their large winter safety flocks and breaking out into their sub flocks, and then more the tom flocks, the brood.
T levels are starting to come up in these guys.
T levels are increasing, and their photoperiodism driven just like a whitetail in the fall.
That's important people know, because I think a lot of people think, well, the climate's changing, so it's warming up earlier or whatever it is. It's like, well, but it's photoperiod, not...
Photoperiod drives the breeding,
but
similar to, again, using the analogy of a whitetail rut, the spring is the turkey rut. The lengthening days allow their brain chemicals to, like you said, increase the testosterone, and so gobbling increases and the desire to breed. That's how it all works. But if we get a May that's crappy and 40 and rainy the whole time, breeding and that subsequent response is not going to be as exciting and prevalent as if it's, you wake up and it's a 43 degree sunny morning and the sun's coming up, it's beautiful and nice, no wind. And you can hear
you got to change your
forever.
Strategy on the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
I find when it's real, if it's real misty, rainy, they feel more confident to be in the fields. It feels like.
And now to that point in that early season, but once you get that tall grass, then it's wet grass. They're not as excited about being out there. Now there's still great. When you get to late May, your bugging opportunities for them are a lot greater. There's a lot more terrestrial, crickets and grasshoppers and spiders and all that good yummy stuff. And they're omnivorous. They'll eat just about anything that they can get. Salamanders,
sometimes
frogs.
You open it up and
it's
goodness,
amazing.
So many critters in there, right? And sometimes it's all plants, Sometimes it's like all spiders and crickets or whatever.
Right.
I've never seen a salamander. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about taking that shot, and if there's anything we want to say there. I think one piece I'll say, this is kind of specific to Maine, but I have a pre-prepared tag. I just find a lot of hunters go in the woods almost planning to fail. It's like, how are you going to get the deer out? How are you going to get the bear out? Like, what's your plan? Right. So, I have my tag ready with, so a little zip tie usually or something like that I'm going to attach it with.
Is so helpful.
Or some kind of rubber band or something that I'm ready that if I harvest, I can legally tag the bird the way I'm supposed to. So that's one component I just want to mention. Be prepared for success and know what your plan is. And it's helpful to know ahead of time if you need to bring that bird to a tagging station, what one are you going to use? Because it sucks to have a bird in the back of your truck or car and they're on your phone trying to find a tagging station. It's like, that's not the way to do it.
Having a little forethought can make the whole event a lot more fun.
Yeah, and you can get home to a good butchering process because, like you said, if it's late season, it can get pretty warm. And now you got a bird in the back of your car and you're driving all around and you're like, man, I'd really like to preserve this meat to the best, as best as I can. So that's one thing I want to say. But leading up to the shot, anything you want to say about that?
Just, again, make sure you know the regs. Like here in Maine, you can shoot 2 birds with 1 shot. In New Hampshire, you can't do that. You can shoot technically 2 spring birds, but the way the licensing is there, you have to physically check one in before you're able to shoot the other one.
So you couldn't take 2.
So you couldn't do 2 in one shot, right?
Because I've taken advantage of that in Maine twice. I've shot 2 birds with 1.
So that's a case where you need to know your regs. Also, again, like we really worked it over good earlier, but know your equipment. know your point of impact, know your effective range, and know where you're going to aim. And know that, those feathers are a suit of armor.
Yeah, and like just don't shoot into a bird. Like take a aimed shot, because there's a tendency for new folks to center mass shoot. It's just like, there it is, bang, and man, you can really ruin your
lot of the
like
meat.
that.
Right. I mean, you figure on a 20-pound bird, by the time you get all the meat out of there, I mean, like, I take every single bit of meat that I possibly can, and the wings, and I have guys that do wing bones, so I save the wings and the feathers and the, everything. Everything gets used. But if you're, putting the majority of your shot into the majority of the meat, then you're missing out on a lot of the reaping of the benefits.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we're hitting them right at that wattle area. I like how you said that, right where the skin meets
right where the skin meets the feathers is the good point to aim, because if you're a little bit high, you're still hitting the head. You're right in there. So that's where you want to be.
I'd agree. Okay, so that bird gets knocked down, and most of the time they're not down and out. They're just down and they are flopping. And
like the old analogy, chicken with a head cut off, that central nervous system will keep on firing for a bit.
Don't underestimate those spurs.
Exactly.
They're pretty nasty.
I've seen some pretty heavy-duty scars.
Oh, yeah?
Holes in boots. Yeah. Right down to holes in people from the spurs. And again, to the new listeners, the spur is kind of that male turkey. I kind of equate it to the antlers of the turkey. It's and spurs and beard and body weight are kind of the three, hey, what'd your bird weigh?
Yeah.
Hey, how long was the beard? Hey, how long were those spurs?
Guys, inch and a quarter.
Right,
inch and a quarter. It's like, okay, dude.
Right.
Every year you get another inch and a quarter, inch and a half.
These spurs on the back of the legs are sharp on an adult bird. Now,
I mean, they're weapons.
They're a weapon, right? And they use that to defend themselves from, other toms. And, I've shot birds that have had substantial spur gouges in their breast meat.
Yep.
That kind of that gangrenous, gooey, nasty stuff. So, watch out, because that bird can still be moving. There's a couple different ways. I mean, all I want to do once I've squeezed the trigger, I want to make sure that my gun is safe on safety, and I shoot usually a single shot, so I'm I'll get myself squared away there. And I want to get to the bird and make sure that it's not, beating itself up. You don't want to break the wings. You don't want to bruise itself. But again, you also don't want it to get up and run off. Yeah. So, some guys will go up and just kind of put a boot on the head.
That's what I used to do, yeah.
One thing that I've done, and again, mindful of spurs, is if you can get up so you can fold the wings and just kind of put your body weight on it, it doesn't last too very long. And the bird is essentially dead.
Yeah.
It's just that nervous system is firing and
kicking.
So
I agree too. Make sure your weapon's safe. When I like to set it down and make sure it's not pointed towards me and the bird where I'm headed.
Well, that's the thing, is there's so much excitement and adrenaline in that moment, and that's another thing I'd say is try to do the best you can to enjoy that moment.
Yeah,
right.
I know. And a shotgun is not drop safe the way like a Glock. Let's say you throw it off the Empire State Building, hits the street, it cannot fire even with a round in the chamber. But a shotgun, I don't like to lean them up against a tree where they can fall and somehow fire. I don't trust a shotgun as much. So also I like to if I can, I like to recover that shotgun shell so I'm not leaving it on somebody's land.
Yeah. Oh, that's big. Is keeping it better than you left it. Yeah. And I've always taught my son and a lot of the folks that I've helped bring through the ranks as turkey hunters, leave it better than you left it. Don't leave trash. Don't leave a shotgun shell. And then some of that goes back to landowner relations. It won't take long if everything gets posted and we don't have a lot of, we don't have places to hunt.
And it's happening anyway, so we got to be careful of that. All right, so you get the bird tagged, you get it home.
Get tagged home. There's a couple different ways you can do it. Some folks do the pluck. I like, depending on what I'm going to do with the bird, I did a full skin mount just on built a Luan backer and made a full fan, wings, everything.
By skinning the bird feathers on.
I did the skinning the bird feathers on.
And use that whole skin
and use the whole skin boraxed.
Wow.
And it
cool.
came out pretty cool. But essentially my biggest point is I want to make sure I recover as much meat as soon as I can as possible. Yeah. So conventional wisdom had kind of always been, just breast them out. They're fine. Just take the breast meat and call it good. And it breaks my heart because the other meat is so good.
More flavor in the other meat.
It really is. So I love breast meat, but in my household, when I'm blessed to be able to shoot a turkey, the very first thing that gets utilized are the legs and thighs.
Oh, yeah?
Right out of the gate. Without hesitation, they are, within a day, they don't even make it to the freezer. They're going to go right into the crock pot.
No, yeah. And then you pick that meat?
Yep.
Do like a soup or something?
I will do, depending if we're going to have like a little victory dance party, we'll do like turkey sliders.
Yeah.
Like barbecue sliders or taco, carnita, like turkey carnita kind of stuff, depending on how we spice it. Yeah. But once you cook it low and slow in a crock pot, it's tender and delicious.
Oh, it's great.
It's
you just
so
gotta
good.
You gotta pull those
the blades.
Yeah,
exactly.
Man. Those tendons are like
they
knife
are
blades.
Brutal.
But it leads a lot of people to not utilize them, and that's unfortunate because that's good dark meat.
It really is.
I want to go back to what you said because I know you like to skin your birds, and I've plucked a lot of birds, and most birds I find worth plucking. Many birds I find worth plucking. I think you've kind of convinced me because, like, if I was going to cook a chicken, it would be a shame to receive a chicken with no skin on it.
Right.
But I'm going to roast that bird whole or spatchcock it usually and roast it. But with a turkey, I'm not going to ever do that. I find that I need to segment out the turkey because the different parts cook it differently, right? So I don't find that the skin is useful enough to me to warrant plucking the entire bird. I would rather let the animals who forage my compost have it for the simplicity's sake. Even though I love the way it looks, like you get it all plucked out, it looks so cool. But for me, first thing, heart liver, I'm going to eat them right away because they don't sit that long, and they are very. If you're somebody who's like, I don't like eating liver, it's like, well, give this a chance because it's a very mild and it's a couple of bites, and that heart's great. I wish I could say I was always consistent with the gizzard. I'm not always good about
really
eating
gotten in the gizzard lately.
Funny texture, isn't it?
It's weird, but what I've done is
I like
one of my favorites is I'll clean it up, slice it thin, and then just quick flash fry it with a little olive oil.
Oh, great! Because it's the
then
boiling
eat that with
process.
eggs.
Oh yeah,
it's just like
scrambled.
It's like thin. Because I mean, it's only as big as a Granny Smith apple, if that. So.
Okay.
I go
try that this year.
cut it thin and then just do it like a stir fry with it.
I usually
quick.
braise it, and it's just for whatever reason I'll put them in the fridge, and then often I don't.
It almost ends up that way. The texture of like venison.
Cool. All
it's like a dark meat,
it's like a steak. Yeah.
Yep. So
great.
But sharp knife, go thin.
Yeah.
Sear it on each side, salt, pepper, garlic if you want, and then some eggs with it for breakfast. That's like breakfast of champions.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep.
Okay, so heart, liver, gizzard. Yep. I love what you said about doing with the legs. The other thing I've done, I've smoked the legs. That's okay. I'm neither here nor there. I find they're not that exciting to eat that way. I really do like if I have the patience to pull all the meat off and grind it is also awesome. It's a little bit of work, but if I have a big tom or a couple big toms, and especially because if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to take all the meat off the back, anything I can get anywhere, right? And I'll just grind it all. Yep. That's great burger meat. Oh, yeah, that's some good burger meat, man.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll often do a package of, because usually I'll have 2 birds in the spring, so I'll do 4 tenders in one package, and that'll be one meal I'll freeze. Yeah. So, and then I'll do the breasts. Like I said, I tend to go over them with the wand. I try to find any pellets. I'm always worried that the pellet's not mine.
Oh, and that's the thing is, and if that's the case, you'll usually find the the accompanying feathers and pus
Yeah,
that could go with it
that
if
could
it's
be
an
in
older
there.
wound. So
Yeah.
you want to be watching for that.
Yeah, like I don't trust that I'll see a wound entrance. Like, because if you pull out the
Right.
breast, if you've shot that bird, you'll see a little tunnel and usually a little bit of feather sticking out.
Yep.
But I'm worried somebody else might have hit it years ago and it's in there and my wife's going to break a tooth. I hate that idea.
Right.
So I wand the whole thing over. Bones, I'm going into stock with them.
Stock, yep.
Yeah, so I'm using those too.
One thing that I got to do, this was a couple of years ago now, we were doing a film project with New Hampshire Fish and Game, and it was kind of like a foraging and turkey hunting episode
cool.
kind of thing. And Renee Zobel, who works for Fish and Game, but she is a great local resource for foraging. Okay. She's terrific. We did a turkey hunt. We weren't for safety reasons, she couldn't squeeze the trigger by just a tiny bit, and it worked out that she couldn't get the bird, but we ended up coming back. I had some turkey meat that, we were incorporated with it, and we did a Laotian larb with it. It's a meat salad. Oh. And so what we did was we took some of the thigh meat and cubed it small.
Okay.
And then took some breast meat and cubed it small. So we ended up with about a half a cup of each. Stir-fried that with sesame seeds, sesame oil, some hot pepper, some lime, just all kinds of, a little fish oil, I think fish paste.
Yeah.
And then on some rice with some foraged, different leafy matter that was all the greens that we were able to bring in, and it was amazing.
Oh, I love that. I find that that's cool, man. I find the sesame is a good. I'll do a lot of times I'll marinate in sesame oil. I'll do like a rice vinegar. Sometimes I'll squeeze an orange, some juice, and then the zest of the orange on there. And then I make a paste of olive oil and wild leek, which is a real distinctive flavor. And then I'll saute onion, and then I'll roll in the cubed up breast meat that's been marinated in those flavors and get this real Asian flavored dish out of it. I mean, that's one of our favorites, I just can't get enough. I mean, I just wish I had more turkey in my freezer than I do, but I think I might have one piece of breast meat left because I try to get a meal right before
you're being
hunt,
a conservationist. You're kind of using your resources.
I do spend it out slow, that's for sure.
Oh, I'm with you.
And then, so I think that takes us through the meat. I do love the grind though. Oh, I want to say that I've had some great results doing stock with the feet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'll take the leg off where the feather meets the skin, and then blanch them. So you got boiling water, and you just drop them. It's very brief. It's like a few seconds into the boiling water. Then they come out, go into cold water, and then all that exterior scale peels off, and the nails exterior cuticle comes off. And now you have what looks like a albino turkey foot still has the claws and everything, but it's all like very pale white color. And then, so there's no dirt or anything left,
Right.
And then that goes into a stock, and I mean, it is just so gelatin rich. You get that real heavy, thick, gelatin out of that. So that's something I like doing. And so at any time, I probably have 10 turkey feet. Everybody gives you their turkey legs.
Right, nobody needs them. Once those 1.25 inch spurs are gone,
exactly. And half the guys these days are like me. I don't know what to do with so many spurs and beards and stuff. You're just like, I don't care anymore here. Taking the beard off, obviously. I'm sure you got a stack of those somewhere.
Well, I try to do something with each one so that, just to kind of commemorate the hunt and
decorate with them in some way.
But no, I'm crazy about it. I'm a big time turkey nerd, just right from way back.
I'm not letting a fan go. I mean, I gotta keep the fan, and then I find that I'm gonna hunt with a new fan every year. So I always want to replace the one if I've got them using them as decorations or whatever. But wow, it's almost here, man. All right, so folks are gonna go to National Wild Turkey Federation. They're gonna get a $35 membership. It's gonna come with the magazine, which is awesome. They can find resources there for potential mentoring and definitely learn a lot about, there, because I love the way you guys break up the regions of the country and sort of describe your conservation efforts
the big
in those different
6
places. Yeah. So
all
that's there.
And one of the other benefits I just want to throw out there is our seed subsidy program. So by being a member of the NWTF, it opens you up to be available to get like food plot seed.
Oh, wow, cool.
At a reduced rate.
Oh, neat.
So that's another one of the benefits of that.
Yeah, cool.
So, so if you're looking to do some of your own habitat improvements and all that.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
But no, if anybody's interested in getting in touch with me, I did it before. I'll do it again. My email address is cheath@nwtf.net.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes.
And I'm always looking for more people to get involved with chapters. Like here in Maine, I would love to start a couple more chapters.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially up like in this, neck of the woods. We've got a very successful chapter in southern Maine. Those guys do some amazing work, but Maine is such a large, broad area. But also we've got chapters all spread out throughout all the 6 New England states. And if you're listening to this in New York, or if you're listening to this anywhere across the country, we've got chapters somewhere near you that you could either become involved in, go to a banquet. There's a lot of ways to help
There's
support.
some cool volunteer opportunities too, right? It's like some of the things you get to be a part of are pretty interesting. You want to describe any?
From habitat work, a lot of apple tree release that we do. We partnered with BHA, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers in Vermont with doing some removal of old barbed wire.
Oh, cool.
That was causing some problems. It no longer served a function and it needed to go. Yeah. Everything was kind of approved by landowners and all that. But it was causing... It was unnecessary to be there. So that was one of the things that we went out and helped out with that. A lot of partnerships, to that end, we all kind of need to work together.
Yeah.
It can't be this clique against this clique if we're all looking to move the mission forward.
Yeah.
We all, whether turkeys are your thing or deer or grouse or trout, whatever, if you can get some skin in the game, I would suggest doing it.
I think the newer generation already gets that inherently, and I think it's the generation that's aging out that had a very different worldview that was maybe more appropriate at the time. But I do think that this generation that grew up with the internet is so networked as it is, like they understand that, and I just keep saying to all the old hunters, I go, pretty soon these hunters are going to have face tattoos. You're just going to have to accept these kids, I just love the idea of these Gen Z kids like coming into the hunting world and bringing to the conservation effort their generation's view of the world.
Right.
And I think a lot of the things that we are wrestling with aren't even going to be like, aren't going to be part of it. Right. Yeah. Especially that approach of like, you're trying to take away my hunting with these conservation laws. It's like, I just don't think they'll see it that way because they grew up in a world with so much regulation. Right. They didn't grow up bringing shotguns to school. So it's like they're going to see it different,
Right. Well, and, also a lot of the generation that's, that we're talking about now has always seen wild turkeys as a fixture here in this area, in New England at least.
That's a good point.
And in my lifetime, growing up when I was 9 years old, there weren't any wild turkeys to speak of. The reintroduction had started, but it wasn't like as available as they are now.
It's nothing now to see 40, 50 birds walk out on the road or something, so.
Yep.
Oh man, it's almost here.
So it's here.
I'm wishing you a really good season.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. Are you going to hunt multiple states?
I will definitely be hunting New Hampshire and Maine. Not sure about other states. I've got plenty of invites. It's just a matter of trying to.
Well, that's 2 states. That's pretty good.
Work it in.
That's 4 birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, here's my thing. I'm also kind of a fall turkey hunting junkie.
Yeah.
So I will often, if I shoot my first bearded bird in New Hampshire, I'm going to either be pretty selective about my second bird, but that's only because
your fall bird counts.
My fall bird counts as my second spring bird. So it's in either or.
Here we got, we can get 7 a year here if you count those 5 in the fall.
Right. So I have to be a little careful because I love the fall turkey hunting so much.
It's a nice quiet time of year to be out there doing that without any other turkey. There's like no one doing it.
Yep.
Very rarely do I see anyone doing it. All right. Well, I'm wishing you good luck, man.
Yeah,
I think I might take my bow out this year and give that a whirl. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Definitely.
Thanks for coming today, man.
Absolutely. Hey, this is always a treat getting to hang out with you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. Help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. If you still haven't seen Season 1 of the WildFed TV show, you can go to myoutdoortv.com, grab yourself a free trial subscription, and then check out all 10 episodes. Season 2 of WildFed premieres on Outdoor Channel in early 2022. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out our store for WildFed hats, stickers, and more. WildFed. Food is all around you.